Get out, bitch! The words shattered the sacred silence of Arlington Ridge National Cemetery like a rifle crack across hallowed ground. The young security guard's spit hit the pavement inches from the woman's worn nursing clogs. She stood frozen, clutching a small metal object in her trembling hand, something that would make every decorated officer within 50 yards drop to their knees if they knew what it meant. Behind the rope line, a silver-haired veteran's coffee cup slipped from his fingers, crashing against the marble walkway. His face had gone ghost white, because he'd just recognized the woman in those cheap blue scrubs, and he knew exactly what that guard had just done. One word escaped his lips, a battlefield call sign that hadn't been spoken aloud in a decade, a name that would flip this entire funeral upside down in the next 60 seconds. Before we dive into this story, I want to ask you something. Stick with me until the very end of this journey. If this story moves you, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see just how far these words can travel across the world. Now, let's begin. The morning air hung heavy with the scent of fresh-cut grass and polished brass as hundreds of uniformed soldiers stood in perfect formation around the gravesite. Admiral Richard Dalton's funeral was the kind of ceremony that shut down highways and required Secret Service clearance. 3 senators sat in the front row. A 2-star general served as pallbearer. The Secretary of Defense had flown in from Washington specifically for this. Nobody got within 100 yards of that casket without being on the list. Maya Chen had known that before she even left her apartment that morning. She'd ironed her only pair of dress pants, then changed back into her hospital scrubs. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She wasn't trying to blend in with the military elite who'd gathered to bury one of the Navy's most decorated officers. She just needed to return something that didn't belong to her anymore. The cab had dropped her off at the main entrance 20 minutes earlier. She'd walked past the visitor center, past the rows of white marble headstones that stretched across the Virginia hillside like an endless army still standing at attention. Her hospital ID badge swung from her neck lanyard, Riverside Community Medical, where she'd worked the night shift for the past 8 years. The closer she got to Section 47, the thicker the security became. First checkpoint, a young Marine with a tablet, scanning names. "Ma'am, do you have an invitation?" Maya shook her head. "No, but Civilian viewing area is back that way." He pointed over his shoulder without looking up. She'd expected this. "I understand, but Admiral Dalton asked me to—" "Ma'am," his voice sharpened. "The civilian section, please." Maya had swallowed her words and kept walking, but not in the direction he'd pointed, because she had something in her pocket that weighed less than an ounce but carried the weight of 17 lives. And she'd made a promise to a dying man that she wouldn't break it, no matter how many checkpoints tried to stop her. The second barrier was a rope line with authorized personnel-only signs every 10 feet. Beyond it, the gravesite opened up, a sea of dress uniforms, medals gleaming in the October sun, rifles held at parade rest. The casket sat beneath a pristine American flag, surrounded by honor guards who hadn't moved a muscle in 30 minutes. Maya stopped at the rope. A security contractor in a dark suit immediately stepped in front of her. Young guy, maybe 26, with a fresh haircut and an earpiece that curled down into his collar. His name tag read Morrison. "This area is restricted." "I know," Maya said quietly. "But I need to— Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to step back." She didn't move. Her eyes were locked on the casket, on the flag draped across it, on the empty chair beside the widow, where nobody sat because that spot was reserved for the guest of honor's closest living friend, a decorated colonel who was currently stuck in Germany due to weather delays. Morrison's hand moved to his radio. "Ma'am, final warning. Admiral Dalton sent me a letter." Maya's voice was steady, but something in it made Morrison pause. "3 weeks ago, he asked me to come today." Morrison's expression didn't change. "Then you'd be on the guest list." "I'm not on any list." "Exactly." His patience was clearly thinning. "So I need you to return to the civilian section before I have to call this in." Maya reached into her jacket pocket. Morrison's entire body tensed. His hand moved toward his hip. "Easy," Maya said, moving slowly. She pulled out a folded piece of paper. The letter, creased from being opened and reread 100 times over the past 3 weeks. "This is from Admiral Dalton. It explains why—" "I don't care if it's from the president." Morrison's voice had turned cold. "You're not authorized to be here." A few heads had turned now. Some of the soldiers near the rope line were watching. Maya could feel their stares, could feel the judgment in their eyes. Some civilian nurse causing a scene at a war hero's funeral. She folded the letter back up. "I just need 2 minutes. I have something that belongs with—" "Ma'am." Morrison stepped closer, his voice dropping to a harsh whisper. You need to leave. Now. I'm not trying to cause trouble. Too late for that. Maya's jaw tightened. She looked past him, toward the casket one more time. Somewhere in that crowd of decorated officers and politicians, she knew there had to be people who remembered. People who'd been there. People who knew exactly why she was standing here. But they were all behind the rope, and she was on the wrong side of it. Morrison keyed his radio. Section 47, I need backup for... Please. Maya's voice cracked slightly. Just let me talk to someone who knew him, someone who served with him. They'll understand. Morrison's expression hardened. Last chance. Turn around and walk away. Maya didn't move. And that's when Morrison made his mistake. His hand shot out and grabbed her arm, not gently, but with the kind of force meant to physically remove someone from the premises. Maya stumbled backward, her shoulder bag slipping off and hitting the ground. The letter fell out. So did her car keys. And something else. Something small and metallic that hit the pavement with a distinct clink. Morrison didn't even look at it. He was too focused on getting her away from the rope line, his grip tightening on her bicep. I said move. Maya tried to pull free. You're hurting me. Should have thought of that before you crashed a military funeral. Several soldiers were definitely watching now. A few of them had moved closer to the rope. Maya could see confusion on their faces, could see them trying to figure out what was happening. Morrison started dragging her backward, away from the gravesite. That's when his temper fully snapped. Get out of here, he hissed, his voice low enough that only Maya could hear. Then, louder, making sure everyone around them could hear, Get out, bitch! The words hit like a slap. Maya froze. Morrison let go of her arm and gave her a small shove for good measure. Go. The cemetery had gone quiet. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Maya stood there, her arm throbbing where Morrison had grabbed her, her face burning with humiliation. She looked down at the scattered contents of her bag, at the letter lying in the dirt, at her keys glinting in the sun, and at the small bronze coin that had rolled 3 feet away and now lay face up on the pavement. She bent down slowly, picking up each item. The letter first, then the keys, then the coin. Her fingers closed around it, and for just a moment she was back in that valley. Back in the helicopter with blood on her hands and gunfire tearing through metal. Back to the moment when a man who had become an admiral handed her this coin with shaking fingers and said, I owe you my life. Morrison was already turning away, satisfied that the problem had been dealt with. But behind the rope line, about 15 feet back in the crowd of veterans, an older man had gone completely still. He was in his late 60s, wearing a navy dress uniform with a chest full of ribbons. His face had weathered into hard lines, his hair silver and cut military short. He'd been holding a cup of coffee in one hand, watching the funeral proceedings with the quiet respect of a man who'd buried too many brothers. But now the coffee cup was slipping from his fingers. It hit the ground and shattered, because he was staring at Maya with an expression that looked like he'd just seen a ghost walk through a wall. His lips moved, forming a single word that came out as barely a whisper. Then louder. Then loud enough that the soldiers around him turned to stare. Phoenix! The name cut through the cemetery like a blade. Maya's head snapped up. Morrison stopped mid-stride and turned around, frowning. Excuse me? But the veteran wasn't talking to Morrison. He was pushing through the crowd, moving toward the rope line with sudden urgency. Other soldiers stepped aside, confused but sensing something important was happening. The veteran reached the rope and stopped, his eyes locked on Maya. Blackhawk Medevac, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Kandahar Valley, summer of 2013. Maya's breath caught. Morrison looked between them, his irritation growing. Sir, I've already asked this woman to, Shut your mouth, son. The veteran's tone was quiet, but it carried absolute authority. The kind of voice that had given orders under fire and expected them to be followed without question. Morrison's face flushed red. Sir, with respect, she's not authorized to... You just told Phoenix to get out. The veteran's eyes hadn't left Maya's face. Do you have any idea what you just did? Phoenix? Morrison shook his head. I don't know what that... It's a call sign. Another voice joined in. A younger officer had stepped forward, his expression shifting from confusion to something else. Something like recognition. Combat call signs are earned. You don't forget them. The veteran finally looked at Morrison, and there was no warmth in his eyes. The man in that casket? He pointed toward Admiral Dalton's grave. He'd be alive today because of her. A ripple of murmurs spread through the nearby soldiers. Morrison's confidence wavered. That doesn't change protocol. The guest list is bullshit. The veteran's voice rose slightly. You just physically assaulted the woman who saved Admiral Dalton's life. More heads were turning now. The murmurs grew louder. Some of the officers were moving closer, trying to hear what was happening. Maya hadn't moved. She stood there holding that bronze coin, her heart hammering against her ribs. Morrison's jaw clenched. Even if that story is true, story? The veteran's expression turned dangerous. You think this is a story? I'm just doing my job, sir. Your job? The veteran stepped right up to the rope, his voice dropping to something cold and hard. Let me tell you about doing your job, son. August 17th, 2013, Kandahar Valley. The landing zone was a kill box. Machine gun nests on both ridges. RPG fire from 3 positions. Command ordered the medevac to abort. He paused, his eyes drilling into Morrison. But the medic on that Black Hawk countermanded the order. She told the pilot to land anyway. Morrison's face had gone pale. 3 times, the veteran continued. That helicopter landed in active fire 3 times, and every time this woman, he gestured at Maya, ran through enemy gunfire to drag wounded soldiers back to that bird. The crowd around them had grown. More officers, more veterans, all listening now. 17 men were bleeding out in that valley, the veteran said. 17 American soldiers who would have died if she hadn't forced that pilot to land. And one of those men was Commander Richard Dalton. Maya's eyes burned. She blinked hard, refusing to let the tears fall. Morrison opened his mouth, then closed it. His earlier confidence had completely evaporated. So when you grabbed her arm and shoved her, the veteran said softly, when you called her that word in front of all these people, what you actually did was assault a decorated combat medic at the funeral of the man whose life she saved. The silence that followed was suffocating. Then a new voice cut through the crowd. What the hell is going on here? Everyone turned. A man in a Marine Corps dress uniform was pushing through the gathered soldiers. 2 stars gleamed on his shoulder boards. Major General Vincent Crawford, commander of the East Coast Military District and one of Admiral Dalton's oldest friends. The crowd parted for him immediately. Crawford's eyes swept the scene, the broken rope barrier, the scattered soldiers. Morrison standing there looking like he'd just swallowed glass, and Maya in her hospital scrubs clutching something in her hand. Well? Crawford's voice was sharp. Someone want to explain why my friend's funeral is being disrupted? The veteran straightened. Sir, this is Phoenix. Crawford's expression didn't change. Phoenix? Yes, sir. Crawford's eyes moved to Maya, studying her carefully. Then he looked at Morrison. Who are you? Morrison cleared his throat. Private security, sir. Omega Security Solutions. I'm assigned to... I don't care who you're assigned to. Crawford's tone could have cut steel. I asked who you are, not who signs your paycheck. Morrison's face reddened. Derek Morrison, sir. Well, Mr. Morrison, I'm going to need you to tell me very carefully why you're manhandling a civilian at a military funeral. She wasn't authorized, sir. She tried to enter the restricted area and you put your hands on her? Morrison hesitated. She refused to leave when I asked. That's not what I asked you. Crawford took a step closer. Did you physically touch this woman? The veteran spoke up. He grabbed her arm, sir, shoved her, called her a bitch in front of everyone here. Crawford's jaw tightened. Is that true, Mr. Morrison? Morrison's mouth opened and closed. Sir, She was disrupting the ceremony and I needed to answer the question. Yes, sir, but I was following protocol for protocol. Crawford's voice went dangerously quiet. You assaulted a woman at a military funeral and you're telling me that's protocol? I didn't assault. You put your hands on her without her consent. In a military context, that's assault. Crawford turned to the veteran. And you said her call sign is Phoenix? Yes, sir. Crawford's expression shifted slightly. From the Kandahar operation? Yes, sir. For the first time, something like recognition flickered across Crawford's face. He looked at Maya again, this time with new eyes. What's your name? Maya's voice came out steady despite the trembling in her hands. Maya Chen. You served as a combat medic? Army Reserve, sir. Attached to the 161st Special Operations Aviation Regiment. Crawford nodded slowly. The Night Stalkers. Yes, sir. And you were the medic on the Black Hawk that extracted wounded from Kandahar Valley in August 2013? Maya's throat tightened. Yes, sir. The general stared at her for a long moment. Around them, the crowd had grown larger. More officers had joined. Even some of the honor guard had broken formation to see what was happening. Crawford's voice dropped. I heard about that operation. 17 soldiers extracted under fire. Yes, sir. One of them was Commander Dalton. Maya nodded. Crawford's eyes moved to her hand, to the bronze coin she was still clutching. What are you holding? Maya hesitated, then slowly opened her palm. The coin caught the sunlight. It was a challenge coin, the kind officers gave to soldiers who'd distinguished themselves. But this wasn't a standard issue coin. On one side was the Navy SEAL trident, on the other, an inscription. For the one who brought me home. R.D. The veteran inhaled sharply. Crawford stared at it. That's Admiral Dalton's personal coin. Yes, sir. He gave that to you? After the operation, sir, before we shipped him stateside for surgery. Crawford's expression had completely changed. The anger was still there, but now it was mixed with something else. Understanding, maybe even respect. He looked at Morrison, and his voice turned to ice. You grabbed a decorated combat veteran. You called her a bitch at a military funeral, and you did all of this while she was carrying Admiral Dalton's personal challenge coin. Crawford paused. Do I have that right, Mr. Morrison? Morrison had gone white. Sir, I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't ask. You didn't listen. You saw a woman in scrubs and you assumed she didn't belong here. Crawford's voice rose. And then you put your hands on her. Sir, I apologize. You don't apologize to me. Crawford pointed at Maya. You apologize to her. Morrison turned to Maya, his face burning with shame. Ma'am, I'm sorry. I was out of line. Maya didn't respond. She just looked at him with those steady eyes that had seen men die and had refused to let them. Crawford wasn't finished. You're relieved of duty, effective immediately. I'll be filing a formal complaint with your company, and you can expect to never work another military event in your life. Morrison opened his mouth, but whatever he was going to say died when he saw Crawford's expression. Leave. Now. Morrison turned and walked away, his shoulders hunched, his career in ashes. Crawford watched him go, then turned back to Maya. Ms. Chen, on behalf of everyone here, I apologize for how you were treated. Maya shook her head. It's not your fault, sir. Doesn't matter whose fault it is. It happened. Crawford gestured toward the casket. You came here to pay respects to Admiral Dalton? I came to return something, sir. Crawford looked at the coin again. He wanted that back? He sent me a letter 3 weeks ago. Maya pulled it from her pocket and handed it to Crawford. He asked me to bring it to his funeral. Crawford unfolded the letter and read it silently. As his eyes moved down the page, his expression softened. When he finished, he looked up at Maya with something that might have been tears in his eyes. He wanted you to give the coin to someone specific. Yes, sir. He wanted you to give it to the man who led the ground team that day. Maya nodded. Crawford folded the letter carefully and handed it back. That man is here. He's actually serving as one of the pallbearers. I know, sir. You knew Captain Martinez was here? The letter mentioned it, sir. Crawford studied her for a moment. Then he turned to the gathered crowd and raised his voice. Can someone find Captain Marcus Martinez and bring him here? Now! Several soldiers immediately moved, disappearing into the crowd. Crawford looked back at Maya. You should have been on the guest list from the beginning. I'm not looking for recognition, sir. I know you're not. Crawford's voice softened. But Admiral Dalton clearly wanted you here. And after what just happened, I'm going to make damn sure his wishes are honored. The crowd parted again, and a man in dress blues walked through. He was in his mid-40s, with close-cropped dark hair and a scar running along his jawline. The ribbons on his chest told stories of combat in 3 different countries. Captain Marcus Martinez. He stopped when he saw Maya, and his expression went through a rapid transformation. Confusion, then recognition, then something like shock. Jesus Christ, he whispered. Phoenix? Maya managed a small smile. Captain. Martinez walked up to the rope line and just stared at her. I heard rumors you'd gotten out. Went back to nursing. Something like that. I tried to find you after the deployment. Wanted to thank you properly. He shook his head. But you'd already disappeared. I don't do well with attention. Martinez's eyes dropped to the coin in her hand. Is that... Admiral Dalton sent me a letter, Maya said quietly. He asked me to give this to you. Martinez's face went pale. Me? He said it belongs with the man who led those soldiers. He led them too. He was the ranking officer on the ground. He was wounded. Maya's voice was gentle. You took command. You held that position until we could extract everyone. Martinez's jaw worked. He looked like he was fighting to keep his composure. Maya stepped forward and pressed the coin into his palm. He wanted you to have it. Martinez stared down at the coin, then closed his fist around it. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. Thank you. Maya nodded and started to turn away, but Crawford's voice stopped her. Ms. Chen, where are you going? She looked back. The civilian section, sir. I've done what I came to do. Absolutely not. Crawford's tone left no room for argument. You're going to stay right here. Sir, I don't need to. Admiral Dalton wanted you at this funeral. He wrote you a letter specifically asking you to come. Crawford gestured toward the front row. You're going to sit with the family and the decorated officers, exactly where you belong. Maya shook her head. Sir, with respect, I'm not... That's an order, Ms. Chen. She blinked. Sir, I'm not active duty. You can't order me to be... Then consider it a very strong request from a 2-star general who's having a really bad day and would really appreciate not having to argue with the woman who saved his best friend's life. A few quiet chuckles rippled through the crowd. Maya looked at the front row, at the empty seats reserved for VIPs and close friends of the deceased. The thought of sitting there, surrounded by generals and politicians and war heroes, made her stomach turn. But then she looked at Martinez, who was still holding that coin like it was made of gold, and she thought about the letter Admiral Dalton had written, about his last wishes, about the 17 men who'd made it out of that valley alive. All right, sir. Crawford smiled, a real smile this time. Good. Martinez, escort her to the front row. Martinez nodded and held out his arm. Maya took it, and together they walked past the rope line, past the gathered soldiers who'd witnessed everything, past Morrison's empty security post. As they moved through the crowd, something extraordinary happened. One by one, the soldiers began to salute. Not the casket, not the flag. Her. It started with the veteran who'd first recognized her. Then it spread to the officers around him. Then to the honor guard. Within seconds, hundreds of hands had risen in a synchronized wave of respect. Maya's vision blurred. She kept walking, kept her head up, but her heart was hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Martinez leaned close and whispered, They remember, Phoenix. They all remember. They reached the front row. The widow, Margaret Dalton, sat in the center seat. She was in her 70s, elegant in black, her face composed despite the grief that had carved new lines around her eyes. When she saw Maya approaching, she stood. Crawford had followed them and made quick introductions. Mrs. Dalton, this is Maya Chen. She served with your husband in Afghanistan. Margaret's expression changed instantly. The medic? Maya nodded. Yes, ma'am. Margaret reached out and took both of Maya's hands in hers. Her grip was surprisingly strong. Richard talked about you, she said softly, especially toward the end. Maya's throat tightened. I'm sorry for your loss, ma'am. He wrote you a letter. Yes, ma'am. He asked me to return the challenge coin to Captain Martinez. Margaret glanced at Martinez, who still held the coin like it was precious. Then she looked back at Maya. That's not the only reason he wanted you here. Maya frowned. Ma'am? Margaret released Maya's hands and reached into her purse. She pulled out another letter, this one in a sealed envelope with Maya's name written on the front in shaky handwriting. He wrote this 2 days before he passed, Margaret said. He made me promise to give it to you today, at the funeral. Maya stared at the envelope. I don't understand. He said the first letter would get you here. Margaret pressed the envelope into Maya's hands. This one is the real message he wanted you to have. Before Maya could respond, the ceremony music began. The honor guard moved into position. The rifles came up. The bugler raised his instrument. Margaret gestured to the empty seat beside her. Please, sit with me. Maya wanted to refuse, wanted to disappear back into the crowd, but the look in Margaret's eyes stopped her. She sat. The funeral proceeded with military precision. The 21-gun salute cracked across the cemetery. Taps played, each note hanging in the air like a question without an answer. The honor guard folded the flag with practiced movements, each crease perfect, and presented it to Margaret with white-gloved hands. Through it all, Maya sat frozen, that second letter burning in her pocket like a live coal. When the ceremony ended and the crowd began to disperse, Margaret turned to her. Read it later, she said softly, when you're alone. Richard wanted you to have time to process it. Mrs. Dalton, what does it say? Margaret's smile was sad and knowing. The truth, dear. The whole truth about what happened in that valley. The truth Richard could never tell anyone while he was alive. Maya's blood went cold. What do you mean? But Margaret was already standing, already being ushered away by family members and military escorts. Crawford appeared at Maya's elbow. Ms. Chen, there's going to be a reception at the officers' club. You're invited, obviously. Maya shook her head. Thank you, sir, but I should go. You sure? There are a lot of people here who'd like to meet you. I'm sure, sir. Crawford studied her face, then nodded. All right, but before you go, I want you to know something. Sir? What you did in that valley, what you did for those men, it matters. It mattered then, and it matters now. His voice was quiet but firm. Don't let anyone make you forget that. Not that security guard. Not anyone. Maya managed a small nod. Thank you, sir. She walked back through the cemetery, past the rows of white graves, past the gathering crowd of mourners heading to their cars. Nobody stopped her now. Nobody questioned her right to be there. She made it to the parking lot before the shaking started. Her hands trembled as she unlocked her car. She sat in the driver's seat with the door still open, her breath coming in short gasps, the adrenaline finally crashing through her system. The second letter felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She pulled it out and stared at the envelope. Admiral Richard Dalton's handwriting, shaky but still legible. Her name in black ink. Her fingers trembled as she broke the seal. Inside was a single page, covered in that same unsteady script. She began to read. And with each line, her world tilted further off its axis. Because Admiral Dalton hadn't written to thank her. He'd written to confess. The letter explained what really happened in Kandahar Valley. The mission that went wrong. The intelligence failure. The ambush that should have been avoided. And the order that Admiral Dalton had given. The order that had sent 17 men into a kill box. The order that he'd regretted every day for the rest of his life. Maya read it 3 times, each pass making her hand shake harder, because the letter didn't just explain what happened, it explained why she'd been discharged early, why her military records had been sealed, why every attempt she had made to reconnect with her unit had been quietly blocked. Someone had wanted her silent, and Admiral Dalton had finally decided to tell her who. The name at the bottom of the letter made Maya's blood run cold. Major General Vincent Crawford, the same man who'd just defended her at the funeral, the same man who'd ordered Morrison removed, the same man who'd invited her to sit in the front row. Maya's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. The letter isn't the whole story. Meet me at the Riverside Diner on Highway 7. Come alone. MC, Marcus Martinez. Maya sat in her car, the letter in one hand and her phone in the other, and realized that the funeral had been just the beginning. Whatever Admiral Dalton had set in motion with those letters, whatever truth he'd decided to reveal after a decade of silence, it was about to blow open in ways she couldn't predict. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Martinez. They're watching you now. Don't go home. Don't trust anyone in uniform, especially not Crawford. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs. She started the engine and pulled out of the parking lot, her eyes checking the rearview mirror every 3 seconds. A black SUV fell into traffic 2 cars behind her. Maya pressed the accelerator and changed lanes, watching the black SUV mirror her movement. Highway 7 was 15 minutes south, but she wasn't going to lead whoever was following her straight to Martinez. She took the next exit without signaling. The SUV followed. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Martinez. Are you moving? She typed back one-handed. Being followed. Black SUV. The response came immediately. Lose them. I'll send new location in 10 minutes. Maya's nursing training had taught her to stay calm under pressure, but this was different. In the ER, she knew the rules. She knew the procedures. Out here, driving through suburban Virginia with someone tracking her every move, the rules had evaporated. She turned into a shopping plaza and parked near the entrance to a grocery store. The SUV slowed but didn't pull in. It idled at the far end of the parking lot, engine running. Maya grabbed her bag and walked into the store like she had all the time in the world. Inside, she moved quickly past the produce section, through the pharmacy and out the back delivery entrance where employees took their smoke breaks. A young stock clerk looked up from his phone. Ma'am, you can't. Maya pulled a 20 from her wallet. Emergency. Didn't see me. The kid pocketed the money and went back to his phone. She walked 3 blocks east, staying off main streets, cutting through a residential neighborhood where kids played basketball in driveways, and the smell of dinner cooking drifted from open windows. Normal life, the kind of life she'd tried to build for herself after leaving the military. Her phone buzzed. Martinez. Blackwood Rest Stop. Route 29 North. 1 hour. She texted back, "How do I know this isn't a trap?" His response was a single word, Kandahar. Maya's chest tightened. Only someone who'd been there would understand what that word meant. Not just the place, but the moment. The choice she'd made when command ordered her bird to abort, and she'd looked the pilot dead in the eye and said, "We're landing anyway." She called a cab from a gas station payphone, paid cash, and had the driver drop her at a mall 40 minutes north. From there, she caught another cab to Route 29. The Blackwood rest stop was one of those forgotten highway oases that predated the interstate system. A crumbling parking lot, a shuttered visitor center, and a cluster of picnic tables under dying oak trees. Only 2 other vehicles occupied the lot, a semi-truck with a sleeping driver and Martinez's silver sedan. He was sitting at a picnic table facing the road, a paper coffee cup in front of him. When Maya approached, he didn't look up. "You made good time." She sat across from him. "The SUV didn't follow me past the shopping plaza." "They didn't need to. They already know where you live, where you work, where you get your coffee every morning." Martinez finally met her eyes. "They've been watching you for years." "Crawford?" "Crawford's just the current face. The operation goes deeper than one general." Martinez slid a manila folder across the table. "Admiral Dalton compiled this over the past 6 months. Everything he could find about what really happened in Kandahar and what happened after." Maya didn't touch the folder. Why would he wait 10 years to come forward? Guilt, cancer. The combination made him reckless. Martinez's voice was flat. He knew he was dying, figured he had nothing left to lose. "And you?" "I've got plenty to lose. Wife, 2 kids, a career I've spent 20 years building." He tapped the folder. "But some things matter more than job security." Maya opened the folder. Inside were photocopies of classified documents, email printouts, financial records, and photographs. The first image showed a group of men in civilian clothes standing outside a nondescript building in Kabul. She recognized one face immediately. "That's Senator Graves, current chairman of the Armed Services Committee," Martinez confirmed. Back in 2013, he was just a defense contractor with political ambitions. What was he doing in Kabul? Negotiating mining rights. Afghanistan has one of the largest untapped lithium deposits in the world. Graves's company wanted exclusive access. Martinez pointed to another man in the photo. "That's Edmund Price. He was Graves's head of security." Maya studied the second man. Late 40s, military build, dead eyes that had seen too much combat and enjoyed it. "Price runs a private military contractor now," Martinez continued. "Omega Security Solutions." The name hit Maya like ice water. That's who Morrison worked for. Morrison was a nobody. Price is the real problem. He's got contracts with half the military bases on the East Coast. His people are embedded everywhere. Maya flipped through more documents. Financial records showing millions of dollars moving between shell companies. Email exchanges between Graves and military officers discussing operational security and asset protection. And then a mission briefing document marked classified, Operation Copper Valley. Her hands began to shake. "This is the Kandahar mission," Martinez nodded grimly. Admiral Dalton was the ranking officer on the ground, but he wasn't calling the shots. The operation was designed to secure a specific valley, the same valley where Graves's company had identified lithium deposits worth billions. Maya read further. The briefing laid out a plan to establish a forward operating base in the valley and eliminate Taliban presence in the region. But buried in the tactical notes was a section marked Civilian Displacement Protocol. They were going to force out the local population. Graves needed the land clear before his mining operation could begin. The military was supposed to do the dirty work and make it look like standard counterinsurgency. Martinez's jaw tightened, but intelligence failed. The Taliban had 3 times the expected forces in that valley. What was supposed to be a quick operation turned into an ambush. 17 soldiers nearly died so a defense contractor could get rich. Not just rich. Graves used that lithium contract to launch his political career. He's been in the Senate for 8 years now, and he's planning a presidential run. Martinez leaned forward. If this comes out, if anyone proves he used military assets to secure private business deals, it destroys him. Maya's mind raced. Admiral Dalton was going to expose this. He already started. 3 weeks ago, he reached out to a journalist at the Washington Herald, gave her enough information to start digging. Martinez paused. She died in a car accident 4 days later, single vehicle crash. Police ruled it mechanical failure. The implications settled over Maya like a shroud. They killed her. Can't prove it. Just like we can't prove that Admiral Dalton's cancer treatment suddenly became complicated 2 weeks ago. Martinez's voice was bitter. The man survived 3 wars and died in a hospital bed because his doctors suddenly couldn't manage his medication properly. Maya closed the folder, her hands trembling. Why are you telling me this? Why not take it to the press yourself? Because I'm active duty. Anything I say can be dismissed as insubordination or mental instability. They'll destroy my credibility before I finish my first sentence. He met her eyes. But you're different. You're a civilian, a decorated combat medic who saved lives while these men were playing political games. And more importantly, Admiral Dalton chose you. Chose me for what? To finish what he started. Martinez pulled out another envelope, this one sealed with wax. He wrote a third letter. This one names everyone involved. Graves, Crawford, Price, and 6 other officers who helped cover it up. He documented everything. Maya stared at the envelope like it might explode. If I take this public, they'll come after me. They're already coming after you. The moment Crawford saw you at that funeral with Dalton's challenge coin, he knew you were part of the Admiral's plan. Martinez slid the envelope across the table. The only question is whether you run and hide or you fight back. Maya's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. We know you're with Martinez. This is your only warning. Walk away. She showed Martinez the screen. He cursed under his breath. They're tracking your phone. I turned off location services. Doesn't matter. They've got access to cell tower data. He stood abruptly. We need to move. Now. They were halfway to Martinez's car when the headlights appeared. 2 black SUVs coming fast from opposite directions, boxing them in. Martinez grabbed Maya's arm and pulled her toward the tree line. Run! They crashed into the woods as the SUVs screeched to a halt. Doors slammed. Voices shouted orders. Maya's lungs burned as she ran through the darkness, branches whipping her face, roots trying to trip her with every step. Martinez was ahead of her, moving with the efficiency of someone who'd done land navigation exercises 1,000 times. Behind them, flashlight beams cut through the trees. Stop! Federal agents! Martinez didn't slow down. Don't believe them. Real feds would have shown badges first. They burst out of the woods onto a service road. Martinez pulled out his keys and pointed at a maintenance shed 50 yards ahead. My backup car. I parked it here yesterday. They sprinted for the shed. Martinez yanked the door open to reveal an old Honda Civic that looked like it had survived 3 different decades. He started the engine and Maya jumped in as the first SUV emerged from the tree line. The Civic's tires screamed as Martinez gunned it down the service road. Maya twisted in her seat, watching the SUVs give chase. They're gaining. Not for long. Martinez took a sharp left onto a dirt trail that barely qualified as a road. The Civic bounced violently over ruts and rocks. Behind them, the SUV's low clearance forced them to slow down. 10 minutes of bone-rattling terrain later, they emerged onto a residential street. Martinez drove normally now, blending into evening traffic, taking random turns until he was satisfied they'd lost their pursuers. He pulled into a hospital parking garage and killed the engine on the 3rd level. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Maya said, You planned this, the backup car, the escape route. You knew they'd come. I've been planning for 3 weeks, ever since Admiral Dalton told me what he was going to do. Martinez's hands were white-knuckled on the steering wheel. He asked me to protect you if anything happened to him. I didn't ask for protection. No, you didn't. But you got it anyway. He looked at her. Because what you did in that valley, what you risked to save those men, it matters. And I'll be damned if I let Graves and his people erase that sacrifice to protect their political careers. Maya's phone buzzed again. This time it was a call. She didn't recognize the number, but something made her answer. Hello? Ms. Rodriguez? The voice was smooth, cultured, and cold. My name is Edmund Price. I believe you met one of my employees today. Maya's blood turned to ice. Morrison. Derek was overzealous. I've already disciplined him for his conduct at the funeral. Price's tone was conversational, like they were discussing the weather. But that's not why I'm calling. I'm calling to offer you an opportunity. I'm not interested. You haven't heard the offer yet. A pause. I know Captain Martinez has given you certain documents that contain classified information. Possessing those documents is a federal crime. Then call the police. I'd rather avoid involving law enforcement. It tends to get messy. Price's voice hardened slightly. I'm offering you a simple trade. Return the documents, agree to a non-disclosure agreement, and receive a very generous financial settlement. Enough to never work another night shift again. And if I refuse? Then things become complicated. Your military records, for instance. I'm sure you'd rather they stayed sealed. Some very unfortunate allegations from your time in Afghanistan. Nothing criminal, you understand, but career-ending for someone in the medical field. Maya's hands shook with rage. You're threatening me. I'm offering you a choice. Take the money and disappear into a comfortable retirement, or refuse and watch everything you've built over the past decade crumble. Price let that sink in. You have 24 hours to decide. I'll be in touch. The line went dead. Martinez had heard enough through the car's speakers. They're going to fabricate evidence, plant false allegations in your record. Let them try. I'll fight it. You can't fight what you can't see. They'll bury it so deep that by the time you know what you're accused of, your nursing license will already be suspended pending investigation. Martinez's expression was grim. I've seen them do this before. To a JAG lawyer who was getting too close to one of Crawford's operations. By the time the investigation cleared him, his reputation was destroyed. Maya's mind raced through options, each one worse than the last. Go to the media, but without evidence they could verify independently, she'd look like a conspiracy theorist. Go to the police, but what crime could she report? Being followed wasn't illegal. Being threatened on the phone would be her word against Price's. What did Admiral Dalton want me to do with the third letter? Martinez reached into his jacket and pulled out the wax-sealed envelope. He wanted you to deliver it to someone who can't be bought or intimidated, someone with the power to trigger a real investigation. Who? The Inspector General of the Department of Defense. Her name is Patricia Leland. She's one of the few people in Washington with the authority and the integrity to act on this information. Martinez handed her the envelope. But you can't just mail it or drop it off. Graves has people in every government building. The letter has to be hand-delivered directly to Leland, in person, with witnesses. Where is she? That's the problem. She's at a defense conference in Chicago. Doesn't return to Washington until Monday. He checked his watch. That gives us 4 days to keep you alive and get you to Chicago. Us? You think I'm walking away now? Martinez's expression was fierce. Those men in that valley were my brothers. Admiral Dalton was my commanding officer. And you jumped out of a helicopter into enemy fire to save us. I'm not letting Price's thugs silence you. Maya looked at the envelope in her hands. Admiral Dalton's final confession, sealed with wax and weighted with the truth about 17 soldiers sent into an ambush for corporate profit. What about your family? If you help me, they'll come after them too. Already handled. My wife took the kids to her parents' place this morning, told them it's a surprise visit. Martinez started the engine. I've got a safe house 2 hours west, former CIA asset, completely off the grid. We can lay low there until Monday, then drive to Chicago. Maya wanted to argue, wanted to tell him this wasn't his fight, but the words died in her throat. Because it was his fight. It had always been his fight. Ever since that valley. Ever since the moment he'd taken command of wounded soldiers and held a position against impossible odds. Okay, she said quietly. Let's go. They drove west as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and red that looked like fire. Martinez kept to back roads, avoiding highways where traffic cameras could track them. He paid cash for gas at isolated stations and kept his phone turned off. 2 hours later, they pulled onto a gravel road that wound through dense forest. The safe house was a small cabin that looked abandoned from the outside, peeling paint, sagging porch, windows dark. But inside it was clean and functional. A generator in the basement, canned food in the pantry, and in the bedroom closet, a locked gun safe. Martinez opened it and pulled out 2 handguns. You know how to shoot? I'm a medic, not an infantryman. Tonight you're both. He handed her a Glock 9mm and a box of ammunition. Just point and squeeze, the gun does the rest. Maya took it reluctantly. The weight felt wrong in her hand. She'd spent her entire career saving lives, and now she was holding a weapon designed to end them. Martinez must have seen something in her expression because his voice softened. I hope we don't need them. But hope isn't a strategy. They spent the next hour going through the documents Admiral Dalton had compiled. Financial records showing money flowing from Graves's company to offshore accounts. Email exchanges discussing civilian relocation and asset elimination. Photographs of meetings that never appeared on any official calendar. And witness statements. Soldiers who'd been in Kandahar Valley that day. Soldiers who remembered the ambush, the chaos, the desperate radio calls for extraction. Some of the statements were anonymous, afraid of retaliation, but others had signed their names. These men are risking everything by coming forward, Maya said. They're doing it because Admiral Dalton gave them permission. He was their commanding officer. If he said it was time to tell the truth, they believed him. Martinez pointed to one statement in particular. This one is from Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Walsh. She was the intelligence officer who briefed the mission. She's been carrying guilt for 10 years because her assessment was overruled. Maya read Walsh's statement. It was devastating in its clarity. The intelligence had shown heavy Taliban presence in the valley. Walsh had recommended postponing the operation until air support was available. But Crawford, acting on orders from higher up, had pushed the mission forward anyway. Crawford knew it was a trap. Worse than that, he knew and didn't care. The mission objective wasn't protecting American soldiers, it was securing that valley for Graves. Martinez's voice was tight with controlled rage. 17 men nearly died. 3 were permanently disabled. Also, a future senator could make his fortune. Maya's phone buzzed. She tensed, but it was just a news alert. She almost dismissed it, then stopped. The headline read, "Decorated Veteran Killed in Home Invasion." She clicked the article. Her hands went numb. The veteran who'd recognized her at the funeral, the one who'd first shouted "Phoenix" and started everything, was dead. Killed in his home by unknown assailants. Police were calling it a robbery gone wrong. Martinez read over her shoulder and cursed. They're sending a message. They killed him because he recognized me. They killed him because he was a witness, because he made a scene at the funeral, and now other people are asking questions. Martinez grabbed his phone. I need to make some calls, warn the other soldiers who gave statements. He stepped outside onto the porch, his voice urgent and low as he made call after call. Maya sat alone in the cabin, staring at the photograph of the dead veteran. His name had been Thomas Brennan. 68 years old, Navy SEAL, retired. Survived 3 tours in Vietnam and lived long enough to die in his own living room because he'd defended a combat medic at a funeral. The weight of it crushed down on her. Martinez came back inside, his face grim. I reached 4 of the witnesses, told them to get somewhere safe. The others aren't answering. Price is cleaning house. Fast and thorough. He's trying to eliminate anyone who can corroborate Admiral Dalton's accusations before Monday. Martinez locked the door and checked the windows. We need to assume we're next on the list. They sat in the dark cabin, guns on the table between them, listening to the forest sounds outside. An owl hooted. Wind rustled through leaves. Normal sounds that felt anything but normal. Around midnight, Maya finally asked the question that had been burning in her mind since the rest stop. Why did Admiral Dalton choose me? Why not you? You were there. You know everything I know. Martinez was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, because you made a choice that day. Command ordered your pilot to abort. You countermanded that order. You risked your life and your career to save men you'd never met. He looked at her. Admiral Dalton respected that kind of courage. The kind that doesn't calculate odds or worry about consequences. The kind that just does what's right because it's right. I was terrified that whole time. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite the fear. Martinez smiled slightly. Besides, you have something I don't. You're already outside the system. They can threaten your job, your reputation, but they can't threaten your rank or your pension or your career progression. You're free in a way I'll never be. Maya thought about that. Free. She'd never considered herself free. She'd spent 10 years trying to forget Kandahar, trying to build a quiet civilian life, trying to disappear into the routine of night shifts and patient charts. But Martinez was right. She'd already walked away from the military. She'd already given up rank and recognition and all the things that made soldiers vulnerable to pressure. All she had left was the truth, and maybe that was enough. She was about to say so when the lights went out. Not just in the cabin, the whole forest went dark. Martinez was on his feet instantly, gun drawn. Generators out. Could be mechanical failure. Could be, but his tone said he didn't believe it. They moved to the window and peered out into the darkness. For a moment, there was nothing, just trees and shadows and the faint glow of stars overhead. Then Maya saw it. A red laser dot, dancing across the wall 3 inches from her head. Martinez yanked her down as the window exploded inward. The gunshot echoed through the forest like thunder. And Maya realized that Price hadn't given them 24 hours to decide. He'd given them just enough time to run. Glass rained down on Maya's head as Martinez dragged her away from the window. A second shot punched through the doorframe, splintering wood 6 inches from where they'd been standing. Martinez killed the interior lights they'd left on in the back room. Basement, now! They crawled across the floor as another window shattered. Maya's knees scraped against broken glass, her palms pressing into debris. The cabin's layout flashed through her mind from their earlier walkthrough. Kitchen to the left, bathroom straight ahead, basement door behind the stairwell. Martinez reached it first and yanked it open. Go! Maya scrambled down the wooden steps into darkness that smelled of earth and oil from the generator. Her foot hit the concrete floor and she pressed herself against the wall, breathing hard, listening to Martinez's boots descending behind her. Above them, the front door exploded inward. Heavy footsteps. Multiple sets. Professional and coordinated. Not the chaotic rush of amateurs, but the measured advance of men who'd done this before. Martinez moved through the darkness with the confidence of someone who'd memorized the space. His hand found Maya's arm and pulled her toward the far corner. She felt metal against her fingers, the generator housing, and then Martinez was pushing her into a gap between it and the wall. "Stay down. Don't move unless I tell you." He disappeared into the darkness. Maya's heart hammered so loud she thought it might give away her position. Through the floorboards above, she heard voices. "Clear the main room. Kitchen's empty. Check upstairs." Professional, calm. These weren't street thugs hired for intimidation. These were operators. Martinez had positioned himself near the basement stairs, his silhouette barely visible in the ambient light filtering down from above. His gun was raised, steady, waiting. The basement door creaked open. A flashlight beam cut through the darkness, sweeping left to right. Maya held her breath, pressing deeper into the narrow gap. The metal of the generator was cold against her back. "Basement," someone called up. "I'm going down." The first boot appeared on the step, then another. A man in tactical gear descended slowly, his rifle mounted with the flashlight, sweeping the beam across oil stains and storage boxes. He was 3 steps from the bottom when Martinez fired twice. The suppressed shots were quieter than the unsuppressed rifle fire from outside, but in the enclosed space they still cracked like breaking bones. The man crumpled, his rifle clattering against concrete. Immediately, chaos erupted upstairs. "Shots fired! Basement! Henderson's down!" Martinez was already moving. He grabbed Maya's arm and pulled her toward a section of wall that looked solid but shifted when he pushed it. A hidden door, old bootlegger escape route, he'd mentioned during their walkthrough. They squeezed through into a crawl space that smelled of mold and rat droppings. Martinez pulled the false wall closed behind them just as boots thundered down the basement stairs. "Henderson, talk to me." "He's hit. 2 to the chest." "Find them!" Martinez was already crawling forward through the narrow tunnel. Maya followed, her elbows scraping dirt, her breath coming in short gasps. The crawl space seemed to go on forever, and behind them she could hear men tearing apart the basement, searching. Then fresh air hit her face. They emerged into the forest 50 yards from the cabin, hidden behind a fallen oak. Martinez pulled her up and they ran, crashing through underbrush, dodging between trees. Moonlight filtered through the canopy in scattered patches, just enough to see by. Behind them, shouts echoed from the cabin. "They're outside! North side! Get the thermal!" Martinez veered east, moving fast. "They've got thermal imaging. We need water." He led her down a steep embankment where a creek cut through the forest. They splashed into water that came up to their knees, ice cold and moving fast. Martinez turned downstream, moving against the current's pull. "Thermal can't track through running water," he said between breaths. "But we need distance before they bring dogs." They followed the creek for what felt like miles, but was probably closer to one. Maya's legs burned. Her wet scrubs clung to her skin. The Glock Martinez had given her was a dead weight in her jacket pocket. Finally, Martinez pulled them out onto the opposite bank. They collapsed behind a cluster of boulders, breathing hard, listening. The forest had gone quiet. No voices, no footsteps. Just the creek's constant murmur and the wind through leaves. Martinez checked his phone. No signal. He cursed quietly and pulled out a paper map from his jacket. Waterproof, military grade. He studied it by moonlight. "There's a ranger station 6 miles northeast. If we can get there before sunrise, we can call for help." "Call who? The police?" Maya's voice was sharp with exhaustion and fear. "Price probably has law enforcement in his pocket too." "Not all of them. There's a federal marshal I served with in Iraq, Jake Morrison. He's based out of Richmond." Martinez folded the map. "If I can reach him, he'll help us get to Chicago." "Your phone doesn't work." "The ranger station will have a landline." He stood, scanning the darkness. "We need to move. They'll expand the search radius." They walked through the night, navigating by compass and moonlight. Martinez set a brutal pace, military standard, designed to cover maximum distance with minimum rest. Maya's nursing shifts had kept her in decent shape, but this was different. This was endurance forged by necessity and fear. Around 3 in the morning, they stopped at a rocky outcrop where they could see the valley below. Lights from the search were visible in the distance. Vehicles, flashlights, probably drones with thermal cameras. Martinez pulled out the envelope containing Admiral Dalton's third letter. The wax seal was still intact despite their flight through the forest and the creek. "If something happens to me," he said quietly, "you take this to Patricia Leland. Nobody else. Don't trust anyone, not even if they show you a badge or tell you they're here to help." Maya took the envelope. "Nothing's going to happen to you." "You don't know that." His eyes were hard in the moonlight. "Price's people are professionals. Military trained, probably former special forces. We got lucky back at the cabin. Luck runs out." "Then we don't rely on luck." Martinez almost smiled. "You sound like a soldier." "I was a soldier. I just saved lives instead of taking them. Sometimes you need both." He stood and shouldered his pack. "Come on, 4 more miles." They reached the ranger station just as the eastern sky began to lighten. The building was small and old, constructed from logs that had weathered decades of seasons. A single pickup truck sat in the gravel lot, the ranger's vehicle. Martinez approached carefully, weapon ready, but the station was exactly what it appeared to be. An isolated outpost staffed by one forest ranger who was currently asleep in the back room. Martinez picked the lock on the front door and they slipped inside. The office was sparse: desk, filing cabinets, radio equipment, and a corded phone mounted on the wall. He picked up the receiver. No dial tone. "Line's dead." Maya's stomach sank. "They cut it? Or it's just old infrastructure?" He moved to the radio equipment. "This should still work. Forest Service uses a separate frequency." He powered up the radio and started cycling through channels, listening for any sign of rangers or law enforcement. Static hissed from the speakers. Then a voice broke through. "Multiple suspects fled the scene. Consider armed and extremely dangerous. If spotted, do not approach. Contact dispatch immediately." Martinez's jaw tightened. "They've reported us as dangerous fugitives." "What are they saying we did?" He listened for another moment. "Home invasion. Murder of the cabin's owner. They planted a body at the safe house." The implications hit Maya like a physical blow. "The man you shot in the basement. Henderson. They're calling him the homeowner." Martinez's voice was bitter. "Perfect cover story. 2 fugitives broke into a cabin, killed the owner, fled when police responded. Nobody will help us now. Nobody in law enforcement." Martinez shut off the radio. "But we don't need the law. We need to get to Chicago." A sound outside made them both freeze. Vehicle engines, multiple vehicles, coming fast up the access road. Martinez moved to the window and swore. 4 trucks. Price's people. "How did they find us?" "Doesn't matter." He grabbed Maya's arm and pulled her toward the back of the building. The ranger's bedroom was a small space with a cot and a single window. Martinez opened it and looked out. 20-foot drop. Trees on the other side. The sound of trucks grew louder, tires crunching gravel. No choice. Martinez climbed through first, hung from the window frame, and dropped. He landed in a crouch and looked up. "Jump. I'll catch you." Maya climbed through and hesitated. 20 feet looked a lot higher from this angle. Behind her, she heard the station's front door crash open. She jumped. Martinez caught her, absorbing most of the impact, and they both went down hard. Pain shot through Maya's ankle as it twisted on landing, but adrenaline kept her moving. They ran into the tree line as shouts erupted from the station. "Back window! They went out the back!" Gunfire cracked through the morning air. Bark exploded from a tree 6 inches from Maya's head. She ducked and kept running, her twisted ankle screaming with every step. Martinez pulled her behind a thick oak and returned fire. 3 shots, precisely aimed, forcing their pursuers to take cover. "Can you run?" Maya tested her weight on the injured ankle. Pain flared white-hot, but it held. "I can manage." They moved deeper into the forest, but Maya's pace had slowed. Martinez stayed with her, supporting her weight when the terrain got rough. But they both knew the truth. Injured, they couldn't outrun trained operators for long. After 10 minutes, Martinez pulled them into a dense thicket, and they crouched low, breathing hard. "We need a vehicle," he said. "Where are we going to get a vehicle out here?" Martinez pulled out his map again. "There's a logging road 2 miles west, connects to Route 33. If we can flag down a car..." "And tell them what?" "We're wanted fugitives. Anyone who picks us up will call the police the moment they see the news." Martinez's expression was grim. "Then we take a car." "We're not carjacking some random civilian." "You got a better idea?" Maya didn't. Her ankle throbbed, her clothes were still damp from the creek, and somewhere in these woods armed men were hunting them with thermal imaging and tactical training. Then she remembered something. The ranger station had a truck. Too obvious, they'll be watching it. Not the truck outside. The ranger had personal belongings in that bedroom: keys, wallet, phone. Maya met Martinez's eyes. Where there's a phone, there's probably a personal vehicle, something not registered to the Forest Service. Martinez considered this. If the ranger lives on site, he'd need a second vehicle for personal use, something that doesn't scream federal employee. Worth checking. We'd have to go back. I know. Martinez studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, but we do this smart. Circle around, approach from the west, and only if we can confirm they've moved on. They worked their way through the forest in a wide arc, moving slowly and quietly. Maya's ankle protested every step, but she bit down on the pain and kept moving. 30 minutes later, they had a clear view of the ranger station from an elevated position. The 4 trucks were still there, but the operators had spread out, searching the surrounding forest. Only 2 men remained at the station itself, standing guard. There, Martinez pointed to a structure partially hidden behind the main building. Storage shed. I can see tire tracks leading to it. Sure enough, a small shed sat back from the main building, its door closed but not locked. And through a gap in the wall, Maya could make out the shape of a vehicle. How do we get to it without those 2 guards seeing us? Martinez scanned the area. We don't. We wait until they rotate out, or we create a distraction. We don't have time to wait. Price's people will expand their search pattern. In an hour, they'll have this whole area locked down. Then distraction it is. Martinez pulled off his jacket and wrapped it around a rock. I'll throw this into the trees east of the station. When they go to investigate, you run for the shed. Keys are probably inside the station, so I'll need to get them while you hotwire the vehicle. I don't know how to hotwire a car. It's a ranger's personal vehicle, probably an old beater. I'll talk you through it. He positioned the rock-filled jacket. On my signal, move fast and stay low. He threw the bundle. It crashed through branches 50 yards from where they crouched, landing with a heavy thud. Both guards immediately turned toward the sound, weapons raised. Check it out. One guard started moving toward the noise. Martinez tapped Maya's shoulder. Go. She ran, favoring her good ankle, staying in the depression of the hillside until the last possible moment. The shed was 30 yards away. 20. 10. She reached the door and yanked it open. Inside was a 1990s Ford Ranger, faded blue paint and rust spots. The keys were not in the ignition. Martinez's voice crackled from the comm device he'd grabbed from the dead operator at the cabin. He must have slipped it into his pocket. How are we looking? Maya kept her voice low. No keys. Under the visor, check the driver's side. She reached up and felt nothing. Passenger side, nothing. She was about to give up when her fingers brushed metal wedged into the seat crack. A single key on a bottle opener keychain. Got it. Start it up. I'm coming to you. Maya slid into the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine coughed, sputtered, then roared to life with a sound like a chainsaw. Subtlety was dead. Immediately, shouts erupted from the station. Vehicle! They're at the shed! Martinez burst from the tree line, running full speed. Behind him, muzzle flashes lit up the morning shadows. Maya threw the passenger door open. Martinez dove inside just as bullets punched through the shed's thin walls. She slammed the truck into reverse and floored it. The Ranger shot backward out of the shed, fishtailing on loose gravel. Maya spun the wheel, shifted into drive, and gunned it down a narrow access trail that cut through the forest. In the rearview mirror, she saw operators running for their vehicles. They're coming after us. Expected. Martinez was checking his weapon. How much gas do we have? Maya glanced at the gauge. Quarter tank. That'll get us to Route 33. After that, we're improvising. The access trail was barely wide enough for the truck, branches scraping both sides as Maya pushed the old Ranger to its limits. The engine screamed in protest, and the suspension rattled over ruts that would have destroyed a normal vehicle. Behind them, the black SUVs were gaining. Newer vehicles, better engines, professional drivers. Martinez rolled down his window and fired 3 shots at the lead SUV. One hit the windshield, spiderwebbing the glass but not stopping the vehicle. Save your ammunition, Maya said. You only have 1 magazine left. Then I better make the shots count. The trail opened onto a wider logging road. Maya took the turn too fast, and the Ranger's rear end slid out, tires screaming. She corrected and accelerated, the truck shuddering as it approached 60 miles per hour on the rough road. The SUVs were 50 yards back and closing. Route 33 appeared ahead, a real paved road with actual lane markings. Maya took the turn hard and merged into light morning traffic. A semi-truck honked as she cut in front of it, but the maneuver forced the pursuing SUVs to slow down. "Take the next exit," Martinez said, studying the map. "There's a town called Millbrook 3 miles south. We can lose them in residential streets." Maya followed his directions, weaving through traffic, using every trick she'd learned from driving in rush-hour hospital traffic. The SUVs stayed with them, but the gap had widened to 100 yards. Millbrook turned out to be a small town just waking up. Mom-and-pop diners opening for breakfast, gas stations turning on their lights, pickup trucks heading to construction sites. Maya drove straight through the main street and turned into a residential neighborhood. Martinez was watching the mirrors. They split up. 2 vehicles went around the block. "They're trying to box us in." "Where do I go?" "School, right there." He pointed to a brick building with a parking lot half filled with cars. "Pull in." We ditch the truck and blend in with the parents dropping kids off. Maya swung into the school lot and parked between a minivan and an SUV. They got out, and Martinez immediately pulled off his tactical vest, revealing a plain black t-shirt underneath. He stuffed the vest under the truck. Maya still wore her damp, dirty scrubs, but in the chaos of morning drop-off, nobody gave them a second glance. They walked toward the school entrance as one of the black SUVs rolled slowly past the parking lot, searching. Martinez took Maya's hand, a couple, not fugitives, and they kept walking. Through the school's glass doors, they could see a secretary at the front desk. "We can't go in there," Maya said. "They'll ask questions." "We're not going in. We're going around." Martinez led her along the building's exterior to where a bus loading zone faced a different street. "We catch a city bus and get out of Millbrook." A yellow school bus was pulling away, but behind it, Maya saw a regular transit bus approaching its stop. They ran for it. The bus driver, an elderly black woman with tired eyes, watched them approach. Martinez fumbled for cash as they climbed aboard. "2, please." The driver looked at Maya's scrubs, at Martinez's disheveled appearance, and said nothing. She took the bills and waved them to the back. The bus pulled away from the curb just as a black SUV turned onto the street. Maya and Martinez sat in the rear, watching through the back window as the SUV slowed, the driver scanning the sidewalks. Then the bus turned a corner and the SUV disappeared from view. For the first time in hours, Maya allowed herself to breathe. Martinez leaned back in his seat, eyes closed. That was too close. "Where does this bus go?" He opened his eyes and looked at the route map posted near the driver. "County line. Connects to regional transit. We need to get to Chicago by Monday morning. It's Friday now. That gives us 72 hours. Martinez checked his watch. "We can make it if we keep moving." The bus rumbled through Millbrook and out into rural countryside. Other passengers got on and off. Factory workers, grocery store clerks, teenagers heading to weekend jobs. Normal people living normal lives, completely unaware that 2 fugitives were sitting in the back. Maya pulled out the envelope containing Admiral Dalton's 3rd letter. The wax seal was cracked now, damaged during their flight through the forest. "Should I read it?" Martinez looked at her. "That's your call. Dalton addressed it to you." Maya broke the seal and unfolded the letter. Admiral Dalton's handwriting was even shakier than in the first letter, like he'd written this one in his final days. The letter began with an apology. Then it detailed everything. The meeting in Kabul, where Graves had presented his mining proposal. The pressure from Pentagon officials who stood to gain from lucrative military contracts. The intelligence briefings that were ignored. The orders Crawford had given to proceed with the operation despite the risks. And then the ambush. Dalton described it in clinical detail. The initial contact. The realization that they were outnumbered 3-1. The radio call to command requesting immediate extraction. Crawford's response, "Hold position, reinforcements en route." But no reinforcements came. Because Crawford had diverted them to another operation, one that happened to be providing security for Graves' survey team on the opposite side of the valley. 17 soldiers had nearly died because Crawford prioritized a billionaire's mining operation over American lives. Maya's hand shook as she read the final paragraph. "I've carried this guilt for 10 years. Every medal they pinned on my chest felt like a stone. Every promotion was a reminder that I climbed over the bodies of better men. I should have refused the order. I should have prioritized my soldiers over my career. I failed them. But you didn't fail, Maya. You jumped out of that helicopter when every regulation said to abort. You ran through enemy fire because 17 men needed you. You were the only one who made the right choice that day. That's why I'm asking you to finish this. Not because you owe me anything, but because the truth deserves someone who won't compromise it for politics or money or fear. Give this letter to Patricia Leland. Trust no one else." The letter was signed and dated 3 days before Admiral Dalton died. Maya folded it carefully and put it back in the envelope. Martinez was watching her. What did it say? She told him. All of it. When she finished, Martinez's expression was carved from stone. Crawford diverted our reinforcements to protect Graves's survey team. We almost died so a politician could survey lithium deposits. Martinez's voice was barely above a whisper, but the rage beneath it was volcanic. Every man in that valley who took a bullet, who lost limbs, who still wakes up screaming from nightmares, it was all for corporate profit. The bus hit a pothole, and Maya winced as her injured ankle protested. Martinez noticed. Let me see it. It's fine. It's not fine, you're favoring it. He knelt in front of her and gently probed the swelling. Probably a bad sprain. You need ice and elevation. I need to get to Chicago. You can't walk to Chicago on a sprained ankle. He stood. Next stop, we find a pharmacy. Get an ankle brace and pain medication. The bus pulled into a larger town. More strip malls, more traffic, more people. They got off at a stop near a CVS and went inside. Martinez bought an ankle brace, ibuprofen, and a bottle of water while Maya waited in the automotive aisle, trying to look inconspicuous. A television mounted in the corner of the store showed the local news. Her own face appeared on the screen. The caption read, Armed and Dangerous Fugitives. Maya's hospital ID photo stared back at her, professional, smiling, completely at odds with the Armed and Dangerous label beneath it. Martinez appeared at her elbow, following her gaze to the screen. The news anchor was speaking. Wanted in connection with the murder of a Virginia resident. Police consider both suspects extremely dangerous and are warning the public not to approach them. Anyone with information should contact... Martinez grabbed her arm. We need to leave. Now. They walked out as casually as possible, but Maya could feel eyes on them. A cashier looked up. A customer turned. Recognition flickered across someone's face. They made it outside and started walking quickly down the sidewalk. Behind them, a voice called out, Hey, that's them! They ran. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Martinez pulled Maya into an alley between a dry cleaner and a pawn shop. We need to split up. No. They're looking for 2 people together. If we split, one of us has a better chance. I'm not leaving you. Maya, listen to me. You listen to me. She grabbed his jacket. We do this together or not at all. That's not negotiable. Martinez stared at her, and something in his expression shifted. A decision made, a line crossed. All right, together. He looked around the alley. But we need to change our appearance. Fast. The pawn shop's back door was locked, but the dry cleaner's wasn't. They slipped inside through the service entrance and found themselves in a room full of hanging clothes, suits, dresses, uniforms waiting for pickup. Martinez grabbed a business suit in approximately his size. Maya found a pair of jeans and a blouse that were close enough. They changed quickly, stuffing their old clothes into a trash bag. Martinez found a pair of reading glasses on a shelf and put them on. The transformation was subtle but effective. He looked like a tired office worker, not a fugitive. Maya braided her hair and tucked it up, changing the shape of her face. They walked out the front door of the dry cleaner just as 2 police cruisers screamed past, heading toward the CVS. Martinez hailed a cab. Where to? The driver asked. Bus station. They rode in silence, watching police activity increase in their rearview mirror. The driver had the radio on, news reports about the manhunt, about the dangerous fugitives, about reward money for information leading to their capture. At the bus station, Martinez paid cash for 2 tickets to Richmond. Richmond? Maya asked. That's the opposite direction from Chicago. Exactly. They'll expect us to run west. We go east first, then circle north. He handed her a ticket. Bus leaves in 20 minutes. They waited in the station, surrounded by travelers who had no idea they were sitting next to the 2 most wanted people in Virginia. Maya's ankle throbbed despite the brace and medication. Her entire body ached from the night of running and fighting. But worse than the physical pain was the weight of knowledge she now carried. Admiral Dalton's letter felt like it was burning a hole in her pocket. 17 men had nearly died for corporate greed. And now, 10 years later, people were dying again to keep that secret buried. Thomas Brennan, the veteran from the funeral, the journalist who'd been investigating Graves. Possibly others they didn't even know about yet. All because Senator Graves and General Crawford had decided that profit and political ambition mattered more than American lives. The announcement crackled over the station's speakers. Now boarding, Route 47 to Richmond. Martinez stood and offered his hand. Maya took it, and they walked toward the bus together. As they climbed aboard, Maya glanced back at the station. Through the glass doors, she could see a police officer entering, showing something to the ticket clerk. Their photos. The bus driver closed the doors and pulled away from the platform. Maya and Martinez took seats near the back and kept their heads down as the bus merged onto the highway. 30 minutes later, Martinez's borrowed phone buzzed. He'd taken it from the ranger station, a basic flip phone, probably untraceable. He opened a text message and his face went pale. "What is it?" He showed her the screen. The message was from an unknown number. "I know where you're going, I know what you're carrying, and I know you'll never make it to Chicago alive. But I'm going to give you one last chance to walk away. Call this number before midnight tonight. Agree to my terms, and I'll let you live. Refuse, and what happened to Thomas Brennan will look merciful compared to what I have planned for you. Eep Edmund Price." Maya stared at the message, her heart racing. Martinez's phone buzzed again. Another text, this time with an attached photo. When Martinez opened it, they both stopped breathing. The photo showed a woman, mid-40s, professional attire, standing outside what looked like a federal building. Patricia Leland, the Inspector General of the Department of Defense, the one person who could act on Admiral Dalton's evidence. And in the photo, a red laser dot was centered directly on her chest. The red dot hovered over Patricia Leland's heart, like a promise of death delivered digitally. Martinez's finger moved toward the phone's power button, but Maya stopped him. "Don't turn it off. That's what he wants. Panic. Mistakes. He's got a sniper on the one person who can help us. Or he wants us to think he does." Maya studied the photo more carefully. The angle, the lighting, the way Leland stood completely unaware. This could be old. Stock surveillance from weeks ago. Martinez zoomed in on the image. Behind Leland, a newspaper stand was visible. He could just make out today's date on the folded papers. "It's current. Taken within the last few hours." Maya's stomach turned, but her mind was already working through the problem like a triage scenario. Assess the damage. Identify the most critical threat. Prioritize action. "Price is showing us he can reach anyone," she said quietly. "But if he wanted Leland dead, she'd already be dead. This is leverage." "Leverage for what?" "To force us into making contact. To get us on the phone so he can trace the call or negotiate terms that benefit him." Maya met Martinez's eyes. "He's not in control. If he was, we'd already be in body bags." The bus hit a pothole and Maya grabbed the seat in front of her to steady herself. Her ankle screamed in protest. Martinez was silent for a long moment, thinking. Then he said, "We need to warn Leland without exposing our position." "How?" "I know someone who might help. Former intelligence analyst, works private sector now, owes me a favor from Baghdad." He pulled up the phone's contact list, empty except for one number he'd memorized and punched in manually. Sarah Kowalski. If anyone can get a message to Leland through secure channels, it's her. He dialed. The phone rang 4 times before a woman's voice answered, cautious. "Who is this?" "Ghost Protocol, Baghdad, 2011. A pause. "Martinez?" "I need a clean channel to the IG's office, DOD. Time sensitive." "Jesus, Marcus, I'm watching the news right now. They're saying you killed someone." "It's a setup." "Long story. Can you help or not?" Another pause, longer this time. Maya could hear the woman breathing, weighing options, calculating risk. "What's the message?" "Tell Patricia Leland her life is in immediate danger. There's a credible threat, possibly from private military contractors working for Senator Graves. She needs enhanced security, and she needs to avoid any public appearances until Monday." "Monday? What happens Monday?" "That's when she gets evidence that brings down a senator and a 2-star general." Kowalski whistled low. "You don't ask for small favors." "Can you get the message through?" "I can route it through a DOD analyst I trust. But, Marcus, if this blows back on me..." "It won't. You're just passing along an anonymous threat assessment. Happens all the time in your line of work." "Anonymous doesn't exist anymore. Every communication leaves a trail." "Then leave a trail that dead ends with a burner phone in Richmond." Martinez's voice hardened. "Sarah, people are dying to keep this quiet. If we don't get that evidence to Leland, they'll keep dying." Kowalski was quiet, then, "I'll make the call. But after this, we're even. No more favors." "Even." The line went dead. Martinez powered down the phone and removed the battery. "That buys us maybe 6 hours before Price realizes Leland's been warned and changes tactics. 6 hours to get from Richmond to Chicago. It's a 12-hour drive minimum, longer if we have to avoid highways. Martinez stared out the window at the passing farmland. We need a vehicle. Something that won't get flagged. Maya thought about that. Every rental agency would require ID. Stealing a car was too risky. Police were already looking for them, and hitchhiking would put civilians in danger. There's another option, she said slowly. Someone who might help us willingly. Who? Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Walsh, the intelligence officer from Admiral Dalton's documents. She gave a statement about the Kandahar operation. Maya pulled out her phone, also a burner, purchased at the same time as Martinez's. If she was willing to go on record about what happened, maybe she's willing to help us finish it. Martinez considered this. Walsh is active duty. Helping us could end her career. So could staying silent while a senator and a general cover up the deaths of 17 soldiers. Maya was already searching for Walsh's contact information. Military personnel databases were restricted, but professional networking sites weren't. Here. She's stationed at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. That's 4 hours south, wrong direction. But it's also off Price's radar. He's expecting us to run straight for Chicago. If we detour south first, we buy time and potentially gain an ally. Martinez weighed the options. Every instinct probably told him to keep moving, to put maximum distance between them and Virginia. But Maya could see him working through the tactical reality. They needed help. And Walsh was the closest thing to a friendly asset in the entire operation. All right, he said finally. We risk it, but we make contact carefully. If there's any sign she's been compromised or coerced, we abort immediately. The bus reached Richmond 2 hours later. They got off at a stop near the University District and found a coffee shop with public Wi-Fi. Maya used a library computer to send Walsh an encrypted email through a secure service Admiral Dalton had mentioned in his notes. The message was brief. Colonel Walsh, I'm carrying Admiral Dalton's final testimony. Need secure transport to Chicago by Monday morning. Can you help? We'll explain in person. Phoenix. She hit send and they waited. 15 minutes passed, then 30. Maya bought coffee with their dwindling cash supply, and Martinez kept watch on the street outside, looking for black SUVs or police cruisers. 45 minutes after sending the email, a response appeared. Phoenix. Confirm identity. What was the first extraction? Maya typed, 17 soldiers, Kandahar Valley, August 2013. The response came immediately. Where are you? Richmond. University District. Stay put. I'm sending someone. Gray Honda Civic. License plate 7KX4829. Driver will say, the Valley remembers. Do not get in any other vehicle. Maya showed Martinez the screen. Could be a trap, he said. Could be, but we're out of options and almost out of time. They waited outside the coffee shop, standing in a position where they could see approaching vehicles from both directions. Students passed by in clusters, talking about exams and weekend plans, oblivious to the two fugitives hiding in plain sight. 20 minutes later, a gray Honda Civic pulled up to the curb. The driver was a young man in civilian clothes, mid-20s, with a military haircut that screamed active duty even without the uniform. He rolled down the window. The Valley remembers. Martinez approached cautiously, one hand near the concealed weapon in his jacket. Who sent you? Colonel Walsh. I'm Corporal Danny Reed. She asked me to bring you somewhere safe. Where? Secure location, 40 minutes from here. Reed glanced at the street nervously. But we need to move. Police have been circulating your photos all morning. Maya and Martinez exchanged a look. Trust was a luxury they couldn't afford, but staying in Richmond wasn't an option either. They got in the car. Reed drove carefully, obeying every traffic law, taking a route that avoided major highways. He didn't speak except to confirm they weren't being followed, checking his mirrors every 30 seconds. The secure location turned out to be a small church on the outskirts of the city, the kind of old brick building that had stood for 100 years and would probably stand for 100 more. Reed pulled around to the back entrance. Colonel Walsh is inside. She's waiting for you. They got out and Reed drove away immediately, not waiting to see them enter. The church's back door opened before they could knock. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Walsh stood in the doorway, 40 years old, sharp-eyed, wearing civilian clothes but carrying herself with unmistakable military bearing. Inside, quickly. They followed her into a small office that smelled of old books and furniture polish. Walsh closed the door and turned to face them. Show me the letter. Maya handed her Admiral Dalton's third letter, the one with the broken wax seal. Walsh read it in silence, her expression growing harder with each line. When she finished, she folded it carefully and handed it back. I've been waiting 10 years for someone to finally tell this story. You gave a statement, Maya said. You were willing to go on record. A statement buried in classified files that nobody will ever see. Walsh's voice was bitter. I pushed for an investigation. I filed formal complaints through proper channels, and every single time I was told to drop it for the good of the service. Crawford shut you down. Crawford, and people above Crawford. This goes higher than one general, higher than one senator. Walsh moved to the window and looked out at the empty parking lot. But Admiral Dalton's letter changes everything. He was the ranking officer. His testimony carries weight that mine never could. Martinez leaned against the desk. We need to get to Chicago by Monday morning. Patricia Leland is the only person with the authority and independence to act on this. I can get you to Chicago. I have a brother in Tennessee who runs a trucking company. He can provide a vehicle, no questions asked. Walsh turned back to them. But I need something from you first. What? Copies of everything. Every document Admiral Dalton compiled, every piece of evidence, every witness statement. Her eyes were fierce. Because if Price's people get to you before Monday, someone else needs to be able to finish this. Maya understood immediately. Insurance, redundancy. The same principle that kept patients alive in the ER, multiple backups for critical systems. We make 3 copies, Maya said. One goes with us to Chicago, one stays with you, and one goes to someone completely outside the military and political system. Who? Martinez asked. Maya thought for a moment. My former supervisor at Riverside Medical, Dr. Helen Moss. She's a civilian with no military connections, no political ties. If we both end up dead, she can take the evidence to the press. Walsh nodded approvingly. Smart, distributed risk. They spent the next 2 hours in that church office, using Walsh's laptop and a portable scanner to copy every document in Admiral Dalton's folder. Financial records, email exchanges, witness statements, the works. Walsh provided 3 USB drives encrypted with military-grade security protocols. They loaded identical copies onto each drive and verified the data integrity. When they finished, Walsh made a phone call. Bobby, it's Sarah. I need a favor. A pause. 2 passengers, Richmond to Chicago, leaving tonight. Clean vehicle, no commercial plates. Another pause. No, you don't want to know why. Just trust me. She listened, then smiled slightly. Thanks, little brother. I owe you. She hung up and looked at Maya and Martinez. Bobby will meet you at the truck stop off I-64 in 2 hours. He'll be driving a silver F-150 with Tennessee plates. He'll get you to Chicago by Sunday night. What about you? Maya asked. I'm taking my copy of the evidence and putting it somewhere safe. Then I'm going to visit every officer who gave a statement to Admiral Dalton and make sure they're still alive and willing to testify when this goes public. Walsh's expression was grim. Price is cleaning house. The veteran from the funeral was just the first. We need to protect the other witnesses. Martinez stood and offered his hand. Thank you, Colonel. Walsh shook it. Thank you for finishing what Admiral Dalton started. That man carried guilt for 10 years because people like Crawford and Graves put politics ahead of soldiers' lives. It's time they paid for it. She walked them to the back door and checked the parking lot before letting them out. One more thing, she said. When you deliver that letter to Leland, make sure there are witnesses. Don't do it in private. Don't do it through intermediaries. Hand it to her in a public setting with cameras and people who can verify what was said. She paused. Because the moment that letter reaches her office, you become the most dangerous people in Washington. They'll try to discredit you, arrest you, maybe worse. Public testimony is your only protection. Maya nodded, understanding the subtext. If they delivered the letter quietly, they could disappear quietly too. But if they made it a public event, Price and Graves would have to respond in the open, where lies were harder to maintain. We'll make it public, Maya promised. Walsh drove them to the truck stop herself, taking a circuitous route that added 30 minutes to the trip, but ensured they weren't followed. She dropped them at the far end of the lot, where a silver F-150 was already waiting. The driver was a bear of a man in his 50s, with arms like tree trunks and a weathered face that suggested years of long-haul trucking. He climbed out when he saw them approaching. You must be Sarah's friends. Martinez nodded. Bobby? That's me. Hop in. We've got a long drive ahead. They climbed into the truck and Bobby pulled back onto the highway, heading west. The cab was spacious and surprisingly comfortable, with 2 sleeping bunks behind the front seats. Sarah didn't tell me much, Bobby said after a while. But she told me enough. You're in some kind of trouble and you need to get to Chicago without attracting attention. That's accurate, Martinez said. Well, nobody pays attention to truckers. We're invisible, just another big rig hauling freight. Bobby glanced at them in the rearview mirror. I'll get you there safe. Sarah's the only family I've got that's worth a damn. If she says you're important, that's good enough for me. They drove through the night, passing through Virginia, into West Virginia, then Kentucky. Bobby knew every truck stop, every rest area, every place where they could refuel without attracting notice. He bought them food with cash and never asked questions. Around midnight, Maya's burner phone buzzed. Another message from Edmund Price. Time's running out. Midnight deadline approaching. Last chance to walk away. She showed it to Martinez, who checked his watch. 11:45 p.m. He's getting desperate, Martinez said. Good. Or he's planning something for when the deadline passes. At exactly midnight, Maya's phone rang. She didn't recognize the number, but something told her to answer. Yes? Ms. Rodriguez. Edmund Price's voice was smooth as ever, but there was an edge beneath it now. I see you've chosen to ignore my generous offer. I'm not interested in your money. Money? Price laughed softly. I'm not offering you money anymore. That ship has sailed. Now I'm offering you something much simpler, your life, in exchange for Admiral Dalton's letter. Not happening. Then I suppose I'll have to take it from your corpse. His tone shifted, becoming almost conversational. Do you know where you are right now, Maya? I do. Interstate 64 westbound, in a silver F-150 registered to Robert Walsh of Knoxville, Tennessee, Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Walsh's brother. Maya's blood turned to ice. How did you... I have resources you can't imagine. Satellites, traffic cameras, cell phone triangulation. Did you really think you could run from me? Price paused. Look out your window, about a quarter-mile behind you. See those headlights? Maya turned. In the darkness, she could make out a vehicle closing the distance. Those are my people, Price continued. And in about 90 seconds, they're going to force your truck off the road. Then they're going to kill everyone inside and take what belongs to me. Martinez had already drawn his weapon. Bobby, we've got a tail. Bobby glanced in his side mirror. I see them. Hold on. He downshifted, and the F-150's powerful engine roared. The truck surged forward, gaining speed despite the weight it was hauling. Behind them, the pursuing vehicle accelerated to match. Price was still talking. You can't outrun them, Maya. This highway is empty for the next 20 miles. No witnesses, no police, nowhere to hide. Then I guess we'll have to fight. With what? A single handgun against 5 trained operators with automatic weapons? Price's voice was almost pitying. You're a nurse, not a soldier. You save lives, remember? You don't take them. Maya looked at Martinez, who was checking his ammunition. 1 magazine, 15 rounds, against 5 operators. The math was brutal. I saved 17 soldiers in Kandahar, Maya said quietly into the phone. I'll do whatever it takes to make sure their sacrifice wasn't for corporate profit. Noble words, but nobility doesn't stop bullets. The pursuing vehicle was close now, maybe 100 yards back and closing fast. Bobby's hands were tight on the wheel. I can't outrun them, not with a full load. Martinez was calculating angles, looking for any tactical advantage, but the highway was straight, flat, exposed. No cover, no terrain to exploit. The vehicle behind them was 50 yards back. Then Bobby smiled. But I don't need to outrun them. He pointed ahead. I just need to reach that. Maya looked where he was pointing. In the distance, maybe half a mile ahead, she could see lights. Lots of lights. A massive truck stop, crowded with vehicles and people even at midnight. Bobby floored it, pushing the F-150 to its limits. The engine screamed in protest, but the truck responded, eating up the distance to the truck stop. The pursuing vehicle was right on their tail now, maybe 20 yards back. Maya could see figures moving inside, preparing to act. Bobby hit his hazard lights and his horn, creating a scene, drawing attention. Other truckers looked up as the silver F-150 roared into the parking lot with another vehicle in aggressive pursuit. Bobby slammed on the brakes and the truck skidded to a halt in the middle of the lot, surrounded by witnesses. The pursuing vehicle had no choice but to slow down or risk a collision with the dozens of people now staring at the commotion. Bobby grabbed a radio handset. Attention all drivers, we've got a road rage incident in the main lot. Vehicle is aggressive and potentially armed. Need witnesses and someone to call state police. Immediately, truck drivers started pulling out phones. Some took photos. Others were already dialing 911. The pursuing vehicle stopped about 50 feet away, idling. Through the windshield, Maya could see the operators inside weighing their options. 5 trained killers surrounded by dozens of civilian witnesses with cameras. Price's voice came through Maya's phone, tight with frustration. Clever. You said I wasn't a soldier, Maya replied. You're right. Soldiers fight. Medics think 3 steps ahead and adapt to the situation. The pursuing vehicle's engine revved once, a threat, a promise. Then it backed up and drove away. But Price wasn't finished. This changes nothing. You've delayed the inevitable by a few hours, but you'll never reach Chicago. And even if you do, Leland will never act on that letter. I'll make sure of it. How? By killing her too? By killing everyone who knows the truth? Maya's voice hardened. You can't silence everyone, Price. The story's already out there. Colonel Walsh has copies. Dr. Moss has copies. You kill us, and 10 more people will step forward. A long silence. Then Price said, very quietly, You're going to regret this decision, Ms. Rodriguez. The line went dead. Bobby let out a long breath. That was too damn close. Martinez holstered his weapon. We need to ditch this truck. They know the vehicle now. Already thought of that. Bobby gestured toward the truck stop. I've got a buddy who runs a charter bus service out of Louisville. He owes me a favor. Can have you on a bus to Chicago in 2 hours, mixed in with a church group heading to a conference. Maya looked at him. You've done enough. We can't ask you to... You're not asking. I'm offering. Bobby's expression was serious. Sarah told me you're trying to get justice for soldiers who got screwed over by politicians. My son served in Afghanistan. Came home with PTSD and a Purple Heart and got treated like garbage by the VA. So yeah, I'll help, because maybe if people like you win, people like my son won't keep getting sacrificed for rich men's games. They waited in the truck stop until Bobby's contact arrived. A cheerful man named Dennis, who operated a small charter bus company. He was indeed transporting a church group to Chicago for a religious conference, and he had 2 empty seats in the back. Maya and Martinez boarded the bus and blended in with the group of middle-aged churchgoers who were too polite to ask questions about the 2 tired-looking passengers who joined them in the middle of the night. The bus pulled out at 3 a.m., heading north through Illinois. Maya finally allowed herself to close her eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Every time she started to drift off, she saw Thomas Brennan's face on the news. The journalist who'd died in an accident. Admiral Dalton, dying alone in a hospital bed because his medication had been mismanaged. How many more people would die before Monday morning? Martinez was awake too, staring out the window at the dark highway rolling past. You think Walsh is safe? He asked quietly. I think she knows how to protect herself. She survived 10 years of trying to expose this operation. She'll survive 2 more days. And Leland? If Kowalski got the warning through, Leland will increase her security. Price won't risk a public assassination. Maya paused. But he doesn't need to kill her. He just needs to discredit the evidence before we can deliver it. How? Maya had been thinking about this for hours. He plants false documents in the evidence folder, or he arranges for a credible source to claim the letter is a forgery, or he frames us for additional crimes so that when we show up to testify, nobody believes us. Martinez nodded slowly, which is why Walsh was right. We need to make the handoff public and recorded. The conference Leland is attending, it's at the Regency Hotel in downtown Chicago, starts Monday morning at 9 a.m. Maya had done her research during one of their rest stops. There will be hundreds of defense officials, journalists, and DoD personnel. If we deliver the letter there, in front of witnesses, Price can't make us disappear quietly. He can still have us arrested. We're wanted fugitives. Let him. An arrest in public at a defense conference with media present? Maya's eyes gleamed. That's the best thing that could happen. Because the moment we're in custody, we demand our lawyer and we make sure every news outlet knows we have evidence of corruption involving a sitting senator. Martinez smiled grimly. You've got this all planned out. I learned from Admiral Dalton. He spent 10 years planning how to expose this operation. The letters, the timing, the choice of Patricia Leland as the recipient, none of it was random. He orchestrated everything to make sure the truth came out even after his death. And he chose you to deliver it. Maya looked down at the envelope in her hands, at Admiral Dalton's shaky handwriting on the outside. He chose someone who couldn't be bought or intimidated, someone who'd already walked away from the military and had nothing left to lose. Except your life. My life means nothing if the truth dies with me. Maya met Martinez's eyes. 17 men nearly died in that valley because someone decided corporate profits mattered more than American soldiers. If I can make sure that never happens again, then whatever happens to me is worth it. The bus rolled on through the pre-dawn darkness, carrying them closer to Chicago and whatever waited there. Sunday passed in a blur of rest stops and cheap food and constant vigilance. Every police cruiser that passed made Maya's heart race. Every black SUV in traffic looked like a threat. But Price's people didn't attack again. That worried Martinez more than if they had. "He's planning something," he said as the bus crossed into Illinois. "Something big for Monday morning. He's out of moves. We've got copies of the evidence distributed. We've got witnesses ready to testify. And we've got Leland warned and protected. We're assuming Leland is protected. We don't know if Kowalski's message got through." Maya had thought of that too, but there was nothing they could do except proceed with the plan and hope that Admiral Dalton's chess game had accounted for variables they couldn't see. The bus reached Chicago Sunday evening as the sun set over Lake Michigan. Dennis dropped them at a transit station with a handshake and a quiet, "Good luck." They checked into a cheap motel under false names, paying cash, and spent the night reviewing their plan for Monday morning. At 7 a.m., they took a cab to the Regency Hotel. The defense conference was already in full swing, hundreds of uniformed officers, government officials, and defense contractors flowing through the lobby. Security was tight, but focused on checking badges and credentials, not faces. Maya and Martinez blended into the crowd, keeping their heads down, moving with purpose like they belonged there. They found the main conference hall where Patricia Leland was scheduled to give the opening keynote address at 9 a.m. The room was already half full, with rows of chairs facing a stage where a podium stood beneath the Department of Defense seal. Maya scanned the crowd. Journalists with cameras, military brass in dress uniforms, congressional staffers taking notes, and in the third row, someone she recognized from the photos in Admiral Dalton's files. Senator Marcus Graves. He sat with perfect posture, expensive suit, carefully styled hair, looking every inch the presidential candidate he planned to become. His eyes swept the room with the calculating gaze of someone who'd built a fortune on reading people and situations. Maya's hands tightened on the envelope. Martinez leaned close. "That's Graves." "I know. If he's here, Crawford might be too." Maya scanned the room and found him, Major General Vincent Crawford, sitting 4 rows back, watching the stage with the same dead-eyed expression he'd worn at Admiral Dalton's funeral. "They're both here," she whispered. "Why would they risk being in the same room where we're delivering evidence against them?" Martinez's expression went cold. "Because they know something we don't." At that moment, Patricia Leland walked onto the stage. She was exactly as she'd appeared in the photos, mid-40s, professional, carrying herself with the no-nonsense authority of someone who'd spent a career investigating corruption. She stepped up to the podium and tapped the microphone. "Good morning. Thank you all for attending the 47th Annual Defense Infrastructure Conference." Her voice was clear and strong, projecting to every corner of the room. Maya started moving toward the front, Martinez at her side. They were halfway down the center aisle when Leland said something that made Maya's blood run cold. "Before we begin today's proceedings, I want to address some recent security concerns that have come to our attention." Maya stopped. Leland pulled out a piece of paper. "This weekend, my office received an anonymous threat suggesting that individuals might attempt to disrupt this conference with false allegations against sitting members of Congress and active military leadership. No, this wasn't how it was supposed to go. I want to assure everyone here that we take such threats seriously," Leland continued. "Any attempt to weaponize this office for political purposes will be met with immediate legal action." Maya felt the trap closing around her. Price hadn't needed to kill Leland. He just needed to get to her first, to warn her about dangerous fugitives with fabricated evidence designed to embarrass political rivals. Martinez grabbed Maya's arm. "We need to leave. Now." But it was too late. Security personnel were already moving through the crowd, checking faces against photos on their phones. One of them spotted Maya, and his hand went to his radio. And that's when someone in the audience stood up and shouted one word that changed everything. "Phoenix!" Every head in the room turned. The man who'd shouted was in his 50s, wearing an army dress uniform with the rank of colonel. Scars marked his face, and one of his arms ended in a prosthetic hand. He walked down the aisle toward Maya, and as he got closer, she recognized him from the witness statements in Admiral Dalton's files. Colonel David Hammond, one of the 17 soldiers extracted from Kandahar Valley. He stopped 3 feet from Maya and saluted. "Corporal Maya Rodriguez, combat medic, 161st Special Operations Aviation Regiment. Call sign, Phoenix." The room had gone completely silent. Hammond turned to face the crowd, his voice carrying across the entire hall. This woman jumped out of a helicopter into a kill zone to save my life and the lives of 16 other soldiers. While everyone else followed orders to abort, she made a different choice. She ran through enemy fire 3 times to bring us home. More people were standing now. Maya recognized some of them from the witness statements. Soldiers who'd been in that valley. Soldiers who'd survived because she'd refused to leave them behind. One by one, they stood. And one by one, they saluted. Leland was staring from the podium, her prepared speech forgotten. Hammond reached into his jacket and pulled out a USB drive. "Ma'am, I have evidence that the Kandahar operation was compromised from the beginning, that soldiers were sent into an ambush to secure mining rights for private contractors, and that people in this room," he turned to look directly at Senator Graves, "profited from our suffering." Graves had gone pale. Crawford was already standing, moving toward the exit, but the soldiers who'd been in Kandahar were blocking the doors. Hammond walked to the stage and handed the USB drive to Leland. "Colonel Sarah Walsh asked me to deliver this to you personally. It contains testimony from Admiral Richard Dalton, financial records, and witness statements from 17 soldiers." Leland took the drive with trembling hands. Maya stepped forward, pulling out the envelope. "And this is Admiral Dalton's personal letter to you, ma'am. His final confession. He wanted you to know the truth before he died." She walked up the steps to the stage and handed the envelope to Leland. The Inspector General opened it and began to read. The room waited in absolute silence. When Leland finished reading, she looked up with an expression of fury so intense it could have melted steel. "Arrest Senator Graves and General Crawford. Immediately." Security personnel moved in, but Graves was already on his feet, his carefully maintained composure cracking. "This is absurd. That woman is a wanted fugitive. She murdered no one," Hammond cut him off. "The victim at that cabin was one of Edmund Price's operators. Price fabricated the evidence to silence her before she could deliver Admiral Dalton's testimony. Graves tried a different tactic. Even if Admiral Dalton wrote something, he was dying, heavily medicated. His mental state was sound enough to compile 200 pages of documentation with dates, times, and financial transactions." Leland's voice was ice. "Documentation that I will personally verify before forwarding to the Attorney General." Crawford made one last attempt to reach the door, but 2 MPs blocked his path. Leland turned to the security team. "I want both men detained pending a full investigation, and I want Edmund Price located and brought in for questioning." As security moved to comply, Graves locked eyes with Maya. The look he gave her was pure hatred, the look of a man who'd spent years building an empire and had just watched it collapse in 90 seconds. Then security had him by the arms and was leading him away. Crawford went quietly, his face a blank mask, but his hands were shaking. As they were escorted out, journalists scrambled for their cameras. This was no longer just a defense conference. This was the story of the year breaking in real time. Hammond turned to Maya. "Admiral Dalton asked me to protect you if anything happened to him. I'm sorry it took me so long to get here." "You came when it mattered." Maya's voice was thick with emotion. "That's what counts." Leland descended from the stage and approached Maya directly. "Ms. Rodriguez, I owe you an apology. When I received the warning about dangerous fugitives, I should have investigated more thoroughly before assuming the worst." "You were doing your job, ma'am. Price is very good at manipulating situations. Nevertheless, you've demonstrated extraordinary courage in bringing this evidence forward." Leland gestured to the USB drive and the letter. "I promise you, this will be investigated fully and transparently. Every person involved will be held accountable." "Including Edmund Price?" Leland's expression hardened. "Especially Edmund Price." As if summoned by his name, Maya's phone buzzed. One final message from Price. "You think you've won, but this isn't over. I still have resources you can't imagine, and I will make you pay for what you've done today." Maya showed the message to Leland. The Inspector General smiled coldly. "Let him try. The moment he sent that threat, he confirmed his involvement. Every agency in the federal government will be looking for him by end of day." She turned to the MPS. "I want a protective detail assigned to Ms. Rodriguez and Captain Martinez immediately, and I want the DOJ briefed within the hour." As security personnel surrounded them, Maya finally allowed herself to breathe. It was done. The evidence was delivered. The truth was out. But even as relief washed over her, she couldn't shake the feeling that Price's final message hadn't been an empty threat. He still had resources, and men like Edmund Price didn't go down without a fight. The protective detail escorted Maya and Martinez to a secure room on the hotel's 4th floor. Two federal marshals stood outside the door while Maya sat on a rigid chair, staring at her phone and Price's final message. I will make you pay for what you've done today. Martinez paced the room like a caged animal. He's not bluffing. Men like Price don't make empty threats. Let him come. Maya's voice was steady, but her hands told a different story. They wouldn't stop shaking. Leland has the evidence. Graves and Crawford are in custody. The story's already breaking on every news channel. What can he possibly do now? Revenge. Pure and simple. Martinez stopped pacing and looked at her. We destroyed his operation, his clients, probably his entire business. Price isn't thinking about salvaging his company anymore. He's thinking about making us suffer. A knock at the door made them both tense. One of the marshals opened it to reveal Patricia Leland, flanked by two DOJ attorneys and a woman Maya didn't recognize. Leland entered and closed the door. Ms. Rodriguez? Captain Martinez, this is FBI Special Agent Rebecca Torres. She's leading the investigation into Edmund Price and Omega Security Solutions. Torres was in her late 30s, sharp-eyed, with the controlled intensity of someone who'd spent years hunting dangerous people. She shook their hands with a grip that meant business. We've been monitoring Omega for 18 months, Torres said without preamble. Money laundering, weapons trafficking, suspected involvement in 3 contractor deaths overseas. But we could never get enough evidence to move forward. Until now. She pulled out a tablet and showed them surveillance footage. Edmund Price entering a building in downtown Chicago, timestamped from 3 hours ago. He's here, Martinez breathed. He arrived this morning, presumably to personally oversee whatever contingency plan he had in place if Graves and Crawford were exposed. Torres swiped to another image. We've tracked him to a private office building 6 blocks from here. He's holed up on the 10th floor with at least 4 operatives we've identified. Maya's stomach turned. He's that close. And getting desperate. In the past hour, he's made 17 phone calls to offshore accounts, trying to move money before we can freeze it. He knows the walls are closing in. Torres leaned forward. But here's our problem. The building he's in is mixed use, residential units, small businesses, a daycare on the 3rd floor. We can't just storm it without risking civilian casualties. So what do you need from us? Martinez asked. I need you to help me end this without bloodshed. Torres's expression was serious. Price is obsessed with you two. You humiliated him, destroyed his operation, cost him billions. If we can use that obsession to draw him out into the open, we can arrest him cleanly. Maya immediately understood what Torres was suggesting. You want us as bait. I want you as the solution to a hostage situation waiting to happen. Torres pulled up architectural plans of the building on her tablet. Price is cornered and dangerous. If we go in hard, he'll either fight to the death or take hostages. But if he thinks he has a chance to capture you, to salvage some kind of win from this disaster, he might come out willingly. Martinez shook his head. Absolutely not. You're asking Maya to walk into a trap. I'm asking her to help me prevent a massacre. Torres looked at Maya. You're a medic. You've spent your entire career making impossible choices to save lives. This is the same thing. Calculated risk to prevent greater harm. Leland interjected. You don't have to do this, Ms. Rodriguez. We can wait Price out. Eventually, he'll run out of options. And how many people might he hurt while we wait? Maya met Torres's eyes. What's your plan? Torres pulled up a street map. There's a coffee shop on the ground floor of Price's building. Public space, cameras, witnesses. We stage a meeting there. You walk in, make yourself visible, and when Price sends his people to grab you, we're waiting. That's a terrible plan, Martinez said flatly. Too many variables. Too much that can go wrong. You're right, which is why you'll be inside the coffee shop before Maya arrives, positioned to provide immediate backup if things go sideways. Torres looked between them. I'll have a full tactical team in place. Snipers on adjacent buildings. Undercover agents positioned as customers. The moment Price's operatives make a move, we take them down. Maya thought about Thomas Brennan, the veteran who'd died for recognizing her at a funeral. About the journalist killed in a car accident. About Admiral Dalton, poisoned slowly in a hospital bed. I'll do it. Maya, no. Martinez grabbed her arm. This is suicide. This is finishing what Admiral Dalton started. She pulled free. Price has been killing people to protect his operation for years. If we can stop him without more bodies, we have to try. Martinez looked at her for a long moment, then turned to Torres. I'm going in with her, non-negotiable. That's the plan, Captain. Torres checked her watch. We move in 2 hours. That gives us time to position assets and brief the tactical team. The next 90 minutes passed in a blur of preparation. Torres's team wired Maya with a microphone so small it was invisible even on close inspection. They gave her an earbud disguised as a hearing aid so she could receive instructions. Martinez got similar equipment, plus a concealed weapon in an ankle holster. The coffee shop was called Blue Moon Cafe, a trendy establishment with exposed brick walls and industrial lighting. Torres had already placed 6 undercover agents inside, posing as customers working on laptops or reading newspapers. Maya and Martinez arrived separately, 5 minutes apart. Maya entered first, ordered a coffee she had no intention of drinking, and sat at a table near the window where she'd be visible from the street. Her heart hammered against her ribs. Martinez came in next, took a seat at the counter with a clear line of sight to Maya's position, and pretended to check his phone. Torres's voice crackled in Maya's earbud. "We're in position. Snipers have eyes on the 10th floor windows. No movement yet from Price's operatives." Maya sipped her coffee and waited. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Then her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "I see you down there. Did you really think I wouldn't notice federal agents posing as customers? The man in the corner reading the newspaper has checked the same page 5 times. The woman with the laptop hasn't typed anything in 15 minutes. And the barista keeps glancing at the entrance like he's expecting trouble." Maya's blood went cold. She showed Martinez the message under the table. Another text came through. "Tell Agent Torres that if she doesn't pull her people out in the next 60 seconds, I'm going to detonate a device that will kill everyone in this cafe." Torres's voice in the earbud was sharp. "He's bluffing. We swept the building this morning. There's no device." Maya typed back, "You're lying." Price's response was immediate. "Am I? Check under your table." With trembling hands, Maya reached under the table and felt something that didn't belong. A small metal object magnetically attached to the underside. She pulled it free and looked at it. A cell phone modified with wires leading to a small brick of what looked like plastic explosive. Torres's voice was urgent now. "Evacuate. Everyone out. Now." The undercover agents stood and started moving toward the exit, trying to appear casual but clearly abandoning their positions. Maya stood with them, but another text stopped her. "You leave that cafe, and I send the signal remotely. The device is on a dead man's switch. The moment I release the button, everyone within 30 feet dies. So you're going to sit back down, send your federal friends away, and wait for my instructions." Maya showed the message to Martinez, who immediately moved toward her, positioning himself between her and the door. Torres was in her ear. "Ms. Rodriguez, we need to get you out of there." Maya sat back down, the device in her hand. "He's got a dead man's switch. If I leave or if your people come in, he detonates. Then we bring in the bomb squad and give him time to activate it manually or take hostages." Maya's mind was racing through scenarios, calculating odds. "No, he wants me, so he gets me." "Absolutely not," Martinez said, but his voice lacked conviction because he knew she was right. Another text. "Very wise. Now here's what happens next. You're going to walk out of that cafe, turn left, and go to the alley entrance on the north side of this building. Come alone. Captain Martinez stays where he is. Any deviation from these instructions, and I blow the cafe remotely." Maya stood and looked at Martinez. "Stay here. Make sure everyone gets out safely once I'm clear. I'm not letting you go alone. You don't have a choice." She grabbed his hand and squeezed once, hard. "Trust me, I've been in worse situations. Not like this. Kandahar Valley was worse. At least this time I know what I'm walking into." She left before he could argue further, walking out of the cafe with the modified phone still clutched in her hand. The moment she was outside, she turned left and headed for the alley entrance. Torres's voice was frantic in her ear. "Ms. Rodriguez, stand down. We can negotiate." "No negotiation. Just get everyone out of that cafe and be ready to move when I give you the signal." "What signal?" "You'll know it when you see it." The alley was narrow and dark, smelling of garbage and rainwater. Maya walked 20 feet in and stopped, waiting. A door opened in the building's side wall, and Edmund Price stepped out. He was younger than Maya had imagined, maybe 45, with the kind of expensive grooming that spoke of wealth and privilege. But his eyes were dead, the eyes of a man who'd watched people die and felt nothing. "Ms. Rodriguez, we finally meet in person." Maya held up the modified phone. "Call off your dead man's switch." "Why would I do that? It's the only leverage keeping you cooperative." Price smiled without warmth. "You're going to come upstairs with me? We're going to have a conversation about the evidence you gave to Inspector General Leland, and you're going to tell me exactly how many copies exist and where they're stored. And then you'll kill me. Eventually. But first you're going to watch me destroy everything you care about. Price's smile widened. Captain Martinez, Dr. Helen Moss at Riverside Medical, Colonel Sarah Walsh, everyone who helped you, everyone who believed your story. I'm going to make them all pay for what you did to my operation. Maya's hands tightened on the device. You're finished, Price. Even if you kill me, the evidence is already public. Graves and Crawford are in custody. Your company is under federal investigation. It's over. It's over when I say it's over. Price pulled out his own phone, the one connected to the dead man's switch. Now drop that device and come with me, or I release this button and everyone in that cafe dies, starting with Martinez. Maya looked at the device in her hand. Then she looked at Price. And she made a choice. She threw the device as hard as she could, straight up into the air. Price's eyes followed it instinctively, and in that split second of distraction, Maya lunged forward. She wasn't a soldier. She wasn't trained in hand-to-hand combat, but she'd spent 10 years working night shifts in emergency rooms, restraining violent patients high on drugs or psychosis. She knew how to use momentum and surprise. Her shoulder hit Price's midsection, driving him backward into the wall. His phone flew from his hand, clattering across the concrete. The modified device fell from the air and hit the ground. It didn't explode, because there had never been any explosive, just a cell phone and wires and a brick of clay molded to look dangerous. Price had been bluffing the entire time. Maya realized this in the same moment Price did, and his expression shifted from shock to rage. He shoved her off and reached for a weapon concealed in his jacket. But Torres's tactical team was already pouring into the alley from both ends. FBI, hands where I can see them. Price froze, his hand halfway to his weapon, calculating odds and finding them impossible. Maya stood, breathing hard, as agents swarmed around them. Torres approached Price with handcuffs. Edmund Price, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, weapons trafficking, and about 40 other charges I'm going to enjoy reading to you. As Torres cuffed him, Price looked at Maya with an expression of pure hatred. This isn't over. Yes, Maya said quietly. It is. They led Price away, and Torres turned to Maya. That was either the bravest or the stupidest thing I've ever seen. How did you know it was a fake device? I didn't, but I figured if Price was willing to blow up a cafe full of people, he would have done it the moment you walked out. The fact that he waited meant he needed you alive. Torres smiled slightly. Still, calling his bluff took guts. Martinez appeared at the alley entrance, sprinting toward them. He grabbed Maya in a fierce embrace that lifted her off her feet. Don't ever do that again. Can't promise that. But she held on tight, letting herself shake now that the danger had passed. The next 72 hours were a controlled chaos of federal investigations, media interviews, and legal proceedings. Maya and Martinez were cleared of all charges. The murder victim at the cabin was identified as one of Price's operatives, and security footage from multiple sources confirmed their version of events. Senator Graves resigned from office ahead of formal charges. Federal prosecutors were building cases for fraud, conspiracy, and corruption that would likely send him to prison for 20 years. General Crawford was court-martialed and stripped of his rank. His military career ended not in honor, but in disgrace, his name becoming synonymous with the kind of corruption that betrayed the soldiers he'd sworn to protect. Edmund Price faced more than 200 federal charges. His company, Omega Security Solutions, was dissolved and its assets seized. Investigators found evidence linking him to 12 deaths, including the journalist who'd been investigating Graves and the mechanical failure that had killed her. But the most significant development came from Patricia Leland's investigation. Using Admiral Dalton's documentation as a roadmap, Leland's office uncovered a network of corruption that reached far beyond one senator and one general. Defense contractors, Pentagon officials, and congressional staffers had all participated in schemes that prioritized profit over soldiers' lives. The scandal became known as the Kandahar Conspiracy, and it triggered the largest military corruption investigation in decades. 3 weeks after the conference, Maya stood in Arlington Ridge National Cemetery once again. But this time, she wasn't being turned away by security guards. Admiral Dalton's widow, Margaret, had requested her presence at a private memorial service. The ceremony was small, just family, close friends, and the 17 soldiers who'd survived Kandahar Valley. Margaret approached Maya after the service, carrying something wrapped in velvet cloth. Richard wanted you to have this. She unwrapped it to reveal Admiral Dalton's Navy Cross, one of the highest military decorations for valor in combat. Mrs. Dalton, I can't accept this. It's not mine to give. It's his to award. Margaret pressed the medal into Maya's hands. He wrote in his will that it should go to the person who taught him what real courage looks like. The person who showed him that doing the right thing sometimes means disobeying orders. Maya's vision blurred with tears. He was a good man who made a mistake. That doesn't erase everything else he did. No, but it haunted him. Until you gave him a chance to make it right. Margaret smiled through her own tears. Thank you for that. For giving him peace at the end. Colonel David Hammond joined them, his prosthetic hand gleaming in the sunlight. We're having a reunion next month, all 17 of us. We'd like you to be there. I'm not sure I belong at a military reunion. You saved our lives. You belong anywhere we gather to remember that day. Hammond's expression was serious. Besides, we voted. Unanimously. We want to make you an honorary member of the unit. Maya looked at the faces around her, soldiers who'd survived impossible odds, who carried scars both visible and invisible, who'd spent 10 years wondering if their sacrifice had meant anything. I'll be there, she said. 1 month later, Maya walked into a Veterans of Foreign Wars hall in Maryland, where 17 men and women waited to welcome her. They'd set up a chair at the head of the table with a placard that read, Phoenix. The reunion was everything Maya had never known she needed. Stories of courage and fear, laughter mixed with tears, the kind of honest remembrance that honored both the living and the dead. Captain Martinez was there too, now formally cleared by the Army and back on active duty. But his career had taken a new direction. The Inspector General's office had requested him specifically to help lead the ongoing investigation into military contractor corruption. As the evening wound down and people began to leave, Martinez found Maya outside, looking at the stars. You're quiet. Just thinking. She gestured at the hall behind them. A month ago, I was a night shift nurse trying to forget I'd ever been a soldier. Now I'm standing here with a Navy Cross and an invitation to testify before Congress about military corruption. Regrets? Not even one. Maya turned to face him. Admiral Dalton taught me something important. The truth doesn't stay buried forever. It might take time, it might cost more than you want to pay, but eventually it comes out. And when it does, it changes everything. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Martinez said, The Inspector General's office made me an offer. They want to create a new position focused specifically on investigating contractor fraud and military corruption. They asked if I knew anyone qualified. That's perfect for you. I recommended you. Maya stared at him. I'm not qualified. I'm a nurse, not an investigator. You're someone who can't be intimidated or bought. Someone who knows how to ask hard questions and pursue truth regardless of consequences. Someone who 17 soldiers trust with their lives. Martinez smiled. Sounds qualified to me. I don't know anything about investigations or military law, or you knew enough to take down a senator and a general using nothing but evidence and determination. He pulled out a business card and handed it to her. At least think about it. The position comes with federal credentials, investigative authority, and the backing of the Inspector General's office. Maya took the card, turning it over in her hands. Patricia Leland's name was embossed on the front, along with a direct phone number. 2 days later, Maya sat across from Leland in a conference room at the Pentagon. I'm offering you a position as a special investigator focusing on military health care and contractor oversight, Leland said. Your medical background combined with your military experience makes you uniquely qualified to identify systemic problems that others might miss. I'm not a lawyer or a trained investigator. You're something better, someone who understands what's at stake when systems fail. Leland pulled out a file folder. I've reviewed your military record. You received 3 commendations for exceptional performance under fire. Your commanding officers described you as someone who refuses to accept unacceptable casualties. Maya thought about that phrase. Unacceptable casualties. It had defined her entire career, the belief that no loss of life was inevitable if you were willing to fight hard enough to prevent it. If I take this position, I need full autonomy, no political interference, no pressure to close cases prematurely. You'll report directly to me, and I report to Congress and the Secretary of Defense. Your investigations will follow the evidence wherever it leads, regardless of who it implicates. Leland leaned forward. I won't lie to you, Ms. Rodriguez. This job will make you enemies. Powerful people who profit from the current system will try to stop you. But it will also save lives, soldiers' lives. And that's what Admiral Dalton died believing you cared about most. Maya looked down at the Navy Cross she now wore on a chain around her neck, hidden beneath her shirt. A reminder that courage sometimes meant standing alone against impossible odds. When do I start? 3 months later, Maya stood in front of a congressional committee, testifying about systemic failures in military contractor oversight. The hearing room was packed with journalists, military brass, and congressional staffers. Senator Elizabeth Warren, leading the hearing, addressed her directly. Ms. Rodriguez, in your investigation, did you find evidence of widespread fraud in defense contracting? Yes, Senator. My team identified 43 cases in the past 5 years where contractors billed the government for services never rendered or equipment never delivered. Total losses exceed $2 billion. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Representative Adam Kinzinger, a veteran himself, asked the next question. And what about the human cost? Did these fraudulent practices endanger military personnel? Maya thought about Kandahar Valley, about 17 soldiers sent into an ambush because someone prioritized profit over lives. Yes, Congressman, in at least 12 documented cases, contractor fraud resulted in soldiers receiving defective equipment or inadequate support. 3 of those cases resulted in fatalities. She spent 4 hours testifying, presenting evidence, answering questions. By the time the hearing ended, news outlets were already running headlines. Military whistleblower exposes contractor fraud. Former combat medic takes on defense industry corruption. That evening, Maya returned to her apartment in Arlington and found a package waiting at her door. No return address, just her name in familiar handwriting. Inside was a letter from Margaret Dalton. Dear Maya, I'm writing to tell you that Richard would be proud of what you're doing. He spent his final months trying to right a wrong that had haunted him for a decade. You've taken that mission further than he ever could have imagined. The Navy is posthumously awarding Richard the Distinguished Service Medal for his contributions to military ethics and transparency. The ceremony is next month. I hope you'll attend. More importantly, I wanted you to know that your testimony before Congress has already had an impact. 3 major defense contractors have been suspended from federal contracts pending investigation. 2 generals have been forced into early retirement, and the Senate Armed Services Committee is drafting new legislation to increase oversight of military contracting. Richard believed that one person with the courage to tell the truth could change the world. You're proving him right. With gratitude, Margaret Dalton Maya read the letter 3 times, then carefully folded it and placed it in a box where she kept Admiral Dalton's challenge coin, his Navy Cross, and the photograph from that day at the funeral when 17 soldiers had saluted her. Her phone buzzed. A text from Martinez. Celebrating the hearing with the Kandahar crew tonight. Duke's Tavern, 8 p.m. You coming? She typed back. Wouldn't miss it. At Duke's Tavern, Maya found the familiar faces, Colonel Hammond, Captain Martinez, and others who'd been in that valley 10 years ago. They'd reserved a private room in the back, and when Maya entered, everyone stood. Hammond raised his glass. To Phoenix. The woman who taught us that courage isn't about following orders. It's about doing what's right, even when everyone tells you to abort. They drank, and Maya felt something she hadn't experienced in a long time. She belonged here, not because of her rank or her credentials or her new position at the Inspector General's office, but because she'd made a choice in a helicopter 10 years ago to save 17 lives instead of following protocol. And that choice had rippled forward through time, eventually bringing down corrupt officials and changing how the entire military approached contractor oversight. Later that night, as the gathering was winding down, a young woman approached their table. She couldn't have been more than 25, wearing an army uniform with the rank of specialist. Excuse me, are you Maya Rodriguez? Yes. The young woman's eyes were bright with something between awe and determination. I just graduated from combat medic training. My instructor told us about what you did in Kandahar, about how you refused to leave soldiers behind even when command ordered you to abort. She paused. I wanted to meet you to tell you that you're the reason I joined the medical corps, because you showed that medics don't just save lives by following rules. Sometimes we save lives by knowing when to break them. Maya stood and shook the young woman's hand. What's your name? Specialist Jennifer Walsh. I deploy to Afghanistan next month. Walsh. Maya glanced at Martinez, who nodded slightly. This was Colonel Sarah Walsh's niece, following in her aunt's footsteps. Do you have a call sign yet? Maya asked. Not yet, ma'am. Those are earned in the field. Maya smiled. Then earn one worth remembering. Make choices that let you sleep at night. Protect your soldiers, and never ever accept unacceptable casualties. Jennifer Walsh saluted, sharp and precise. Yes, ma'am. As the young medic walked away, Hammond leaned close to Maya. You know what you've become, don't you? What? A legend, the kind of story that gets passed down through training classes and late-night conversations in barracks. The medic who jumped into hell and brought 17 soldiers home. I was just doing my job. No. Martinez's voice was quiet but firm. You were doing what very few people have the courage to do, Standing up for what's right, even when it costs you everything. That's not just doing your job. That's being a hero. Maya looked around the table at faces marked by war and survival, at people who understood sacrifice in ways civilians never could. I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who refused to let good people die for bad reasons. She raised her glass. And I'm someone who's going to keep fighting to make sure it doesn't happen again. They drank to that. 6 months after the congressional hearing, Maya received a call from Patricia Leland. I wanted you to hear this directly from me. The investigation you started has expanded beyond anything we anticipated. The Justice Department is prosecuting 37 individuals for fraud and corruption. We've recovered over $3 billion in fraudulent payments, and Congress has passed the Military Contractor Accountability Act, which institutes the strictest oversight requirements in history. Maya sat down, processing the magnitude of what Leland was saying. All of that from one letter? From one person who refused to stay silent. Leland's voice was warm. Admiral Dalton started this, but you finished it. You and Captain Martinez and Colonel Walsh and everyone else who decided that truth mattered more than career advancement or personal safety. What about Price? Graves? Crawford? Edmund Price is facing 247 federal charges. His trial starts next month, and prosecutors are confident they'll secure multiple life sentences. Senator Graves pleaded guilty to avoid trial. He's serving 15 years at a federal facility, and General Crawford was dishonorably discharged and sentenced to 12 years for his role in the conspiracy. Justice. Not perfect, but real and tangible and public. There's one more thing, Leland continued. The president wants to award you the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The ceremony is in 3 weeks. Maya's throat tightened. That's not necessary. It's not about necessity. It's about recognition. You exposed corruption that was killing soldiers and stealing billions of taxpayer dollars. You brought down a senator, a general, and one of the largest defense contractors in the country. And you did it all while being hunted by hired killers and labeled a fugitive. Leland paused. The president believes that kind of courage deserves recognition. 3 weeks later, Maya stood in the East Room of the White House, wearing a borrowed dress because she didn't own anything formal enough for a presidential ceremony. The room was filled with dignitaries, military officials, and journalists. But in the front row sat the people who mattered most. Margaret Dalton, Colonel Hammond, Captain Martinez, Colonel Sarah Walsh, and the other 15 soldiers from Kandahar Valley. The President of the United States stepped forward and began to speak. Maya Rodriguez represents the best of what it means to serve. As a combat medic, she saved 17 lives under enemy fire. As a whistleblower, she exposed corruption that threatened the integrity of our military. And as an investigator, she's continuing to protect soldiers from those who would exploit them for profit. The president placed the Medal of Freedom around Maya's neck. This medal recognizes not just what you did in one helicopter on one day, but what you've done every day since, choosing courage over comfort, truth over convenience, and justice over silence. The room erupted in applause. Maya looked out at the faces watching her, the soldiers she'd saved, the widow of a man who'd found redemption through confession, the officials who'd supported her investigation. And she thought about a young nurse who'd climbed onto a Black Hawk helicopter 10 years ago and made a decision that would define the rest of her life. The decision to fight for 17 soldiers she'd never met. The decision to finish what Admiral Dalton started. The decision to stand up against corruption even when it meant risking everything. After the ceremony, Maya found herself standing alone in the White House garden, looking at the Medal of Freedom in her hands. Martinez joined her, his own Navy Cross gleaming on his dress uniform. How does it feel? Heavy. Maya smiled slightly. But good. Like everything we went through actually meant something. It meant 17 soldiers lived instead of died. It meant corrupt officials faced justice. It meant the system changed. Martinez looked at her seriously. And it meant showing a whole generation of soldiers that one person with the courage to tell the truth can take down empires built on lies. Maya thought about Specialist Jennifer Walsh, deploying to Afghanistan with the determination to be the kind of medic who never accepted unacceptable casualties. She thought about the reforms that were changing how the military worked with contractors. She thought about the investigation still ongoing, the corrupt officials still being exposed, the lives being saved by better oversight and accountability. One person couldn't change everything, but one person could start something that grew beyond themselves. What's next for you? Martinez asked. More investigations, more testimonies, more fights against people who think soldiers are disposable assets. Maya met his eyes. What about you? Same thing, but together this time. Leland approved my transfer. Starting next month, I'm officially assigned to work with you on contractor oversight. Maya smiled. Partners? Partners. They stood in the garden as the sun set over Washington, two people who jumped out of a metaphorical helicopter into enemy fire and lived to tell about it. And somewhere in Arlington Ridge National Cemetery, beneath a flag-draped grave, Admiral Richard Dalton rested peacefully. His final mission complete. His confession delivered. His legacy secured in the hands of a combat medic who taught him that real courage meant doing the right thing, even when every regulation said to abort. Especially then. Maya returned to work the following Monday, walking into the Inspector General's office with her Medal of Freedom locked safely at home and her challenge coin from Admiral Dalton in her pocket where it belonged. On her desk was a new case file. Another contractor, another pattern of fraud, another group of soldiers at risk. She opened the file and began to read. Because the fight wasn't over. It would never be completely over. But now, at least, the fight was fair. And Maya Rodriguez, Phoenix, the medic who'd refused to accept unacceptable casualties, was exactly where she needed to be, standing guard over the people who couldn't protect themselves, speaking truth to power, and proving every single day that one person with courage could change the world. The end.